Well, good morning, everybody. This is Billy Trout with the Tennessee Department of Revenue's Taxpayer Education section. And on behalf of our Commissioner, David Geragino, and our Taxpayer Services staff, we certainly invite, or rather, uh, will enjoy being with you this morning, I guess is what I'm trying to say, for today's new business workshop presentation. We are recording today's presentation as well, so it'll be on our website either later today or tomorrow, so that you can refer back to this. And we look forward to presenting you with a lot of good key details about how to get your business going on the state level, and a few other resources as well. So I've got Miss Katie Julian, who is in our taxpayer education staff, and she's the queen of all things webinar and training related on the electronics here. So she'll be walking you through this material today. And I have our Assistant Director of Taxpayer Services, Dan Vinson, who is, along with me, will be monitoring chat throughout the presentation. And Katie will let you know here in just a moment how we're going to do chat for today. So with that, I'll just kind of turn this over to Katie, and we'll be popping in and out as the day goes on, and where the few hours goes on. We won't be here all day, thank goodness.
We
But
could be here all day if we really wanted to be.
no, we don't want to be, Katie.
No.
Honestly, let's be
Okay.
honest. But but anyway, we'll have a good time with it. So with that, Miss Katie Julian, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Billy. And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Just before we get started, to go over a few things you see on the screen right now. Hopefully, you're not going to have any issues with audio or video. If you do, the best thing to do, we've always found, is try to leave the event and re-enter it. We will be recording this, so you can, as Billy said, watch it later today, maybe definitely by tomorrow. There's also a participant guide, which is a PDF of all of these slides. The hyperlinks that you see on your screen, if you're watching the video of this or the webinar live, you can't actually click on your screen at these hyperlinks, but you'll be able to click those hyperlinks in the PDF. So you go to tn.gov/revenue, then click on taxpayer education, then new business workshops. That taxpayer education, that's a tile kind of towards the bottom of the main revenue page. So we have a lot of material together to go over today. Again, like Billy said, it's 3 hours long. So hopefully we will be able to take a little break around the middle sometime, but we're going to take some natural Q&A breaks as we get done with certain portions of this webinar. So if you have questions about the particular topic that we're presenting, put those in the chat. The chat will go to just this panel, and some questions we'll answer, the panel, Billy and Dan will answer for you in the moment, but then we'll kind of gather them up and go over some of those questions when we get to these Q&A breaks at the end of each segment so that we can all kind of learn together. All right, well, with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started here. Today, we are going to be breaking things up into 3 main segments. Basically, the first part is going to be setting up your business. That means setting things up with us, Department of Revenue, setting things up with the other agencies and other places that you need to go to dot all your I's and cross all your T's to get going. We'll share some resources there with you too. Then we're going to talk about the taxes, the state level, Tennessee state level taxes. We're going to focus on the major taxes, business tax, sales tax, and a little bit of F&E. We won't be touching too much on the other tax types, but we'll show you resources on how to get information about those if they pertain to you. But we want to make sure that, the main goal of today is to make sure that if you're a new business, if you're thinking about starting a business, if you're a tax professional or a professional that helps businesses, a bookkeeper or a attorney or CPA, we just want to make sure the goal is that everyone is in compliance. If you're a business owner or helping a business owner, the last thing you want to worry about is this, right? You want to be thinking about marketing and your bottom line and making money, right? You don't want to have to deal with tax issues. So we're going to try to break things down and make it as simple as possible for you. It really isn't that complicated, actually, but it can seem that way. Finally, the third session we're going to have today is going to be on the resources, focusing on some places on our website for you to go to get answers to things, and also mainly TENTAP, which is our online filing platform. It's kind of like online banking, but for your tax accounts. We're going to show you some basics of working in that and kind of where to get started with that. So getting started here, we're going to first talk about a resource we have on our web page that is specifically for new businesses. This is a screenshot you're seeing here, but I'm going to take you on a little field trip over live to this part of our website because we're going to break it down over the next 30 minutes or so. So let's see here. Share my web browser. You should see my web browser now. We are now at tn.gov/revenue, which is Revenue's homepage. Make it a little bit bigger here. How's that? Okay. At the bottom of our web page, the main page, you're going to see something that says for businesses. Before I click on that, I will show you. This is that taxpayer education and outreach. That's where you're going to click to find the, well, here, I'll just go ahead and show you. In case you haven't already navigated over to where you can find the PDF of this presentation. So I clicked on Taxpayer Education and Outreach, and now I'm going to click on New Business Workshops. You'll hear me also talk throughout today about our webinars because we have lots of webinars. We have a library of about 60 webinars now. I'll reference you to some of those, but you'd click Tax Webinars to get to those in our library there. But here's the New Business Workshops tile you're going to click on, and then download participant guide right here. And later today or tomorrow is where you'll find, oh gosh, I hate that freeze frame there. Get over that. This is where you'll find a recording of today's new business workshop. What you're seeing here is the previous quarter's new business workshop. Well, they change a little bit each time. So we do have a Spanish version of the new business workshop. It's not re-recorded quarterly. So if you work with any clients, if you're a CPA, or if you are, if that is something that's helpful to you, that's a new thing. This was a Spanish version of this workshop that we're doing right now. So back over to the for new businesses. I get sidetracked easily. Okay, so we're back on tn.gov/revenue, and this for businesses tiles where we're going to click, and then we're going to click on, well, in your spare time later, kind of peruse this whole page, but specifically we're going to focus right now on this for new businesses. Click here. And this is where we're going to walk through in just a minute all these steps, getting set up, getting your licenses and permits. The next session, we're going to talk about tax accounts, which includes discussing exemptions and how to register for them and the due dates and all that. But setting up a business. Before I click there, I'm going to show you too, this is a worksheet that, let's just look at it. It's kind of just a checklist, so to speak, of things that you need to do if you have not yet started your business. If you're here and you have not yet started, or even if you are a new business and you've already launched and you want to go in here and just make sure that you've done everything you need to do and determined everything, it's not a bad idea to even go in later. I always like to say if there's anything that you hear today, if your business is already started and you learn something today and you think, I think I might have not done that correctly, or not gotten set up right, or maybe I forgot I forgot this step. It's never too late. We can always help you. The goal is to actually fix it before you get penalties and interest fees and stuff like that. And the goal is to stay in compliance beforehand. But if you're brand new, we'll get you set up if you're having some confusion or you think you might have gotten set up incorrectly. So back to our slides, we're going to walk through this setting up a business. All right, step one, setting up your business. So the first thing to do when you're setting up your business is to determine your business structure and your entity type. We're going to talk about that in depth on the next slide, so I'm not going to go into it a whole lot right this moment. The next thing is making sure that you're getting all the licenses and permits that you need. We're also going to break that down. But these next 6 or 7 or 8 things here on this list, I'm going to go over with you right now because they're pretty simple. More information about them on that setting up a business tile that I just showed you. But one thing I want to draw your attention to too real quick, this blue box here that you see, the information box. It is important to determine all of these factors as soon as you can. so that everything is set up in sync, like in sync with all the different agencies you're in sync with. The Secretary of State, if that pertains to you, your county clerk's office, the city clerk's office, the Department of Revenue, Department of Labor. You want to have these things like your entity type, your business name, the start date of your business, your tax year. You want to have all of that determined before you start registering for going to all these different agencies to get set up. If you don't have it all together, it's a little harder to go back. We can fix it, like I said, but it's kind of harder to go back and get things in sync after the fact. If you start off as a sole prop and then a couple weeks later you decide, you know what, I think I want to be an LLC, that's okay. You can do that. But before you start going and making all your visits to all these state agencies and local governments and stuff, it's best to have it all determined before then. So business name and addresses, establishing your business name. The Small Business Administration website does have tips on how to select a business name. You can also go to the Secretary of State's business name availability database. That might be a helpful resource for you. I will say if you are setting up yourself as a sole proprietor, your name in terms of tax accounts is going to be set up in your actual legal name as an individual, and then you'll have a DBA, a doing business as, set up under that. For LLCs, corporations, a business name is going to be the actual name of the business. Do you need to register with the Secretary of State, the SOS? That is going to be, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later when we talk about franchise and excise tax, but any actually, hold on. I'm sorry. Let me back up a little bit because I still want to talk about addresses. I got ahead of myself here. Business addresses. So your location address, that's building structures of brick and mortar. That's basically a physical location. If your business is located online, then that location address is going to be your home address. A lot of people sometimes feel uncomfortable with that, but that is the way our local jurisdictions, that's the way we set up to where taxes can be dispersed to the local jurisdictions of where you're actually located. It's not information that we give out to anybody, but if you're a home-based business, that location needs to be your home. Now, your mailing address can be different. A location address cannot be a PO box. I repeat, a location address cannot be a PO box. It also cannot be a mailing service, like a lot of UPS stores now have mailing services there. That's basically the same as a PO box. It cannot be that. That can be your mailing address, but it cannot be your location address. That is the actual brick and mortar where you're located, or your home if it's a home-based business. All right. Now getting to registering with the SOS. Sorry about that. Do you need to register with the SOS? So any corporation, limited partnership, limited liability company, or business trust that's chartered or organized in or doing business here in Tennessee is going to need to register with the Secretary of State and file an annual report through the Secretary of State. Here on the next slide, when we start talking about entity type and business structure, we'll talk a little bit more about, whether you want to decide to be a corporation, a limited partnership, an LLC, or so on and so forth. But just know that you will need to register with the Secretary of State if you decide that you are going to be one of those types of entities. If you're a sole proprietorship, you will not need to register with the Secretary of State. Registering with the Secretary of State and being a corporation or LLC is also going to prompt the requirement for F&E, franchise and excise tax for you. More on that later. So do you need an employer identification number, an EIN or FEIN? That's a great question. If you are a sole proprietorship, you're going to get set up with us using your Social Security number, okay? All others get set up using an EIN, but even if you are a sole proprietorship, you may need an EIN for other purposes, not for setting up with the Department of Revenue and setting up your state tax accounts, but if you're going to have employees, you will need an EIN. So you can obtain that from the IRS. It's a pretty simple process this day and age. Um, Determining the start date of your business. So the effective business start date is the date that your tax obligation begins. I'm going to repeat that. What you choose as your business start date is the date that tax obligation begins. Some people want to kind of jump the gun a little bit, which is fine, and go ahead and get things set up, get tax accounts set up, but just pay close attention when you get to the question when you're at the clerk's office or when you're registering on our website with what you use as your start date. That definitely comes into play with sales tax. A lot of times people want to go ahead and open up a sales tax account so that they can start using a certificate of resale to stock the shelves and stuff, right? Well, as soon as you list a date as your start date, tax obligation begins, and even if you're filing zeros, it still needs to be filed. We're going to break that down a little bit more for you later. Something else you'll have to determine, you'll get this question when you are registering for a tax account, is what is your NAICS code? That stands for the North American Industry Classification System code. It's a standard that is used by federal and state statistical agencies to classify businesses for the purpose of collecting, analyzing, and publishing statistical data. Just pay attention to that. When you're registering, you can search the NAICS code database by keyword just to see what fits you best. This came into play big time during COVID because certain industries got economic relief funds. And the only way we knew what industry someone was in by what NAICS code they registered themselves for. So pay close attention to that. Sometimes that can get overlooked, but make sure you pay attention to getting as close as you can to the proper NAICS code when you're getting set up. All right, so determining your fiscal tax year. So most companies and most businesses are on a calendar year, 12 consecutive months beginning January 1 and ending December 31st. There is also the option to do a fiscal year, which is 12 consecutive months ending on the last day of any month other than December. That would make it a calendar year, fiscal year. But you will need to determine that, and when you're registering for tax accounts, it will ask you what your fiscal tax year is, because there are taxes that are based on, the due date is based on when your fiscal tax year ends, such as business tax and franchise and excise tax. Those are not monthly returns. That's an annual return that is determined, the due date determined based on your fiscal tax year. If you are a corporation LLC, you're going to want to go ahead and identify the directors, officers, shareholders. That is something that with it's not uncommon that that changes over time. Once you are set up with your directors, officers, and shareholders, if that changes over time, that is something that you want to get in touch with us about when and if that time comes. All right, now we're going to dive in a little bit to deciding your structure and entity type. First, I want to say this is something that we cannot decide for you. Sometimes we get that question like, what do you think I should be? This is definitely something that you need to determine on your own. You may want to seek legal advice if you decide to do that. That's fine. Do your research, but this little chart here is just going to kind of break it down just a little bit in terms of how you're going to register with us also. Anyone who registers a business in Tennessee has to ensure that they indicate their business structure, and it's necessary to establish tax accounts. Like I said, sometimes people change what their structure is. They operate as a sole proprietorship and then decide they want to change. But we're just talking about getting started here. So a sole proprietorship is one individual in business alone. Like I said, that state level tax account number is set up using the social security number of that one individual that is the sole proprietor. There's no other option there other than using your social security number for that. A partnership is usually two or more persons, and that you will set up a tax account with the state of Tennessee using the FEIN of the partnership. A limited liability company, there are two different types. There's a single member limited liability company or a multi-member. So the single member is obviously one individual entity, and that can be set up using the social security number of the individual or a federal employer identification number. A multi-member LLC will be set up using the EIN number of the LLC. There's also professional limited liability companies. These are legal offices, stuff like that. It's a company engaged in rendering a professional service. PLLCs are set up with the state. Their tax accounts are set up using an FEIN. Same with the corporation, which is a chartered legal entity. And nonprofits are also set up with us using their FEIN. Licenses, permits, and more. Okay, this is where it can get kind of overwhelming, right? When you're a new business, where do you go for what? This chart kind of helps you break it down just a little bit. We'll start with the business license. You're going to get a business license from your county clerk and maybe a city clerk if you live or if your business is located within the jurisdiction of a municipality that requires business license. We're going to talk about this later, but most businesses need some type of business license, either a minimal business license or a standard business license. Get that from your clerk's office. Your charter or your business registration, as we talked about on the couple slides ago, this is going to be for LLCs, corporations, partnerships. This is obtained through the Tennessee Secretary of State's office. Their business registration, they actually just a couple years ago updated and now have a really great, easy online business registration for those types of businesses. Your FEIN, as we already discussed, is obtained through the IRS, and that's going to be, like we said, required for partnerships, corporations, LLCs, business trusts, and really any business that's going to have employees, regardless of structure. So I'll just reiterate this. If you're a sole proprietorship and you are not going to have any employees, you don't need an EIN. If you are going to have employees, if you're a sole proprietorship, you'll set up with us using that social, but you will still need an EIN for like unemployment insurance tax and stuff like that, which is the next thing on our list, unemployment insurance. That is a tax that is paid. It's one of the only state level taxes, really the only state level tax that is not paid to us. You will set that up through the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. And any business that's got employees or payroll is going to need unemployment insurance. And again, that's not through us. We get those questions a lot because people assume that since it's a tax here in Tennessee that is set up through the Department of Revenue, but it's not. Some industries, certain professions do require a professional license, such as contractors, cosmetologists, insurance agents. Um, those are obtained, that professional license is obtained through the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance. Sometimes some confusion there between that license and the business license. I was at a county clerk's office a couple years ago, and there was a contractor that came in, and he was just intent that he had gotten his license, and he had obtained a contractor's license. He had not yet gotten his business license. So this is where it can be confusing, y'all. There's just a lot to handle here. That's why we're here today, right? Okay, if you're going to be serving alcoholic beverages for consumption on premises, liquor by the drink, you'll set up a tax account with us, but also you're going to need an alcohol license from the TABC. So that's a two-step thing. You get your license through them, and then you set up that liquor by the drink account with us. But if you're going to be selling alcohol on premises, you'll go to them, the TABC, first for that alcohol license. So all other tax accounts here in Tennessee are set up through the Tennessee Department of Revenue. There might be some local taxes such as occupancy tax, if you've got short-term rentals, that kind of thing, that you're going to need to set up locally, but we'll discuss today all the different tax accounts that you set up through us. Okay, now before we move on to the next section talking about diving into the taxes, I want to share with you some resources here because we've just talked about just getting set up properly. Obviously, there's a million other things you have to do to get set up properly too, right? You've got to get your loan from the bank. You've got to uh, all kinds of stuff, set up a marketing plan. Well, these are some external resources that will help you in a lot of different ways other than just the tax side of things. The Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, ECD, has a Smart Start tool that will help you visualize your business model, connect with resources across the state. It's a great place to start. This is a link to their Smart Start guide, and there's actually a Smart Start portal that's really helpful that just kind of, it's like a wizard. It walks you through, have you done this? Have you done that? It's a great resource for you. This is a link next to the Tennessee Small Business Development Center, and that's a network of centers that provides counseling and training to help small business owners start, grow, and expand their businesses. They have lots of free resources on their website, such as a step-by-step business planning workbook. And again, even if you've already started your business, it's not too late to go back and look through some of these resources and just, just to double check and make sure that you've done everything. SCORE Association. SCORE is volunteer business counselors, advisors, and mentors that offer free or low-cost counseling throughout the whole United States, but they have uh, local groups that can help you. They have online workshops as well that discuss topics such as a startup roadmap. That's pretty cool. I've checked that out. Also, simple steps to exiting your business, which is something that if you're starting a business right now, you definitely don't want to think about ending it, but it's something that's a reality at some point in time. And getting out of the business and exiting properly is a good way to ensure that you're not going to have additional taxes, fees, penalties, interest, stuff like that. And we've got information on our website as well about how to close your business. There's also the Small Business Administration. They've got a great guide on their website, information about funding programs, federal contracting, lots of learning platforms, online webinars, stuff like that, and also can provide local assistance as well. All right, so we're going to talk in a minute about tax accounts, what tax types are applicable to your business. Then we're going to discuss some resources that are available to you and how to ensure that you have access to all your tax accounts and know how to use TENTAP. We're going to go over that later, but we're going to stop for just a minute. Billy and Dan, have there been any questions? I've been seeing lots of stuff going on over there in chat, but anything that y'all have seen that might be good to bring up to this whole group regarding this stuff we've just talked about?
Well, I think first of all, you're doing a great job, Katie. Look at you being good like you always are.
Thank you, Billy.
But yeah, some different questions have come up about lots of different things. Just to kind of hit back, oddly enough, some folks are concerned about NAICS codes,
Okay.
which we don't really care a ton about. We do want it to be right.
Hmm.
What we're trying to do is to make sure that your business, we can put you in a particular sort of category so that our research department can pull data at different times and that sort of thing. That's very helpful for the legislature when we're looking at overall data about like how much taxes collected by a certain type of business or even at the federal level, sometimes we'll be asked to get information like that. And we had put that link out there, Katie, for
Oh,
the
you
NAICS
did? Did you
codes that
share
you're
this?
going
Okay,
to.
good. Good.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
just,
we put that in the chat.
yep, you can search lots of different ways. And this is the same kind of search tool we have on our website when you're registering too. It's easy to
Yeah,
find. Just don't
and
overlook
TINTAP
it.
and TINTAP is really cool because when you get to that part of registration, it'll say, you know, search for the keyword for your business, like restaurant or food truck or
Clothing,
clothing
furniture.
or anything. Right, right. And then you pick from the list and choose the code that best matches your situation. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, sometimes it's a little hard, and then there's some other, what they call other categories. Pick one. We're going to be okay with that. Okay.
That's right.
Um, Dan's on here too. Dan, do you have any that you want to bring up?
Why, yes, I do.
All right.
Someone asked if we were registered in another state but have business events in Tennessee, what kind of registration is needed? What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's a open-ended question that has many answers, believe it or not. But to answer
When we
this,
talk about, I'm going to interrupt you for a second, Billy, because we are actually going to get a little touch on that a little bit when we talk about business tax and sales tax coming up. We're
yeah,
going to talk
why don't we
about whether or
hold? Yeah,
not.
let's hold on to that because there is a
Mhm.
not a bright line answer to that. but there is some other information I'm sure that
Mhm.
Katie will go through, and we can revisit that if that doesn't address your situation. I think that's a very fair question and one that we get quite often.
Mhm. Yeah, Nexus. So I'm assuming. Did you say that business is located in Tennessee and
No,
they have events
outside,
outside
outside.
of Tennessee, but have events here? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
We're going to talk about Nexus a
Yeah, it
little bit
happens
later.
all the time. Yep.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think we can go on, Katie. I think
Okay.
we've addressed the basics of some of these here too. And
Okay.
some people have some questions about business license and business tax, and guys, we have a whole thing about that. So let's hang
Yeah.
on that deal.
We'll see if
Okay.
you still have those questions after this next little session here.
Okay.
So we're gonna
Thanks.
just thank you, Billy and Dan. We're gonna barrel through here and just move right along to at least covering business tax before we take a break for sure. All right, business tax. The first thing I want to tell you all about is a fantastic resource. It's our business tax manual. I know that doesn't sound exciting, but we actually get really excited about it because it's still kind of new. These tax manuals have been around for a few years now. We used to have these tax guides that were kind of just, they were fine, but it was like just reiteration of what the law says and that legalese speak and stuff. These tax manuals that we have now really break things down in real language, giving examples, resources. They're fantastic. We use them internally for training, and then I think I probably open up our business tax manual and our sales tax manual at least 10 times a day because it's just a lot of information. And even though we work with this stuff all day, every day, there's still times when we have to double check ourselves and make sure. You can search the manuals. Actually, let me just go ahead and take you on over to the business tax manual so that you can see how these manuals work. Um, let's just go here. All right. So I'm back at tn.gov/revenue, our homepage. I'm going to go over to, there's a couple different ways you can get to the manuals, but I'm going to show you where all the manuals are. Click the drop down here. There's also a tile for this, but here's the drop down under tax resources. Click on tax guidance, and then you've got a few options here on this menu to the left. Under tax manuals, there's a drop down, or you can just click on there, click on it, and then you see all the tax manuals, like alcohol tax, business tax. This is like the ag, farmers, nursery operators, and timber harvesters. That's our agricultural one. So you can see here, it's not just tax specific. Sometimes we have industry specific manuals. F&E, all tax that's gone away, inheritance tax. For military members and veterans, we've got miscellaneous taxes. There's several here. Gross receipts, bottlers tax, tobacco manual, utilities gross receipt, recordation tax, this is a sales and use tax for automobiles and boats. That's mainly a manual that's used by county clerks, but got some great information in it. There's a sales tax manual, and if you click on industry specific guides, we've got a few here that are all fairly new. We've got a specific one for contractors. We have a specific manual for nonprofits, a manual for short-term rental units, and a manual for automobile dealerships. So some great information there. Let's click on the business tax manual. You can always see the current version of our manual here. It says current manual. You can also look up prior versions. Sometimes, as not sometimes, often we have to update these as there are law changes and policy changes and stuff comes into play. And you can see here this version that we're looking at now was just updated last month. So if you're looking for information about a previous tax year, though, for some reason, maybe you're filing an old return or needing to amend something, you can always look at double check an older version. So let's click on the current business tax manual here. Whoa, my internet's going slow. All right, so I'll zoom in just a little bit. Just to show you how it is set up here, we've got a table of contents where you can click anywhere in the table of contents. You can see here it's 179 pages. Um, that's a lot of information, right? But it is set up very clearly. My favorite aspect of it is you just click Control F, like you would search for anything on any web page, and search any term. You can search contractor, and you can see 153 instances of that word. You can just kind of click through it to see there's a whole section specifically about business licenses for contractors. Anyway, so just a great resource there. I will close out of this and continue on with the slides. I'll be referring to these tax manuals a good bit throughout the day. Okay, so lots of information on this one slide that is a business tax and licensing overview. The business tax set through the Tennessee Department of Revenue and your business license that, as we mentioned earlier, you obtain locally from your county clerk and your city official if it's required in that city or town. They're tied together in the sense that a standard business license requires you to file business tax. So we're going to break that down a little bit here. If your business grosses $3,000 or less annually, no business license is required. All right, that's kind of just maybe you're just starting out and you're not sure if you're going to meet that $3,000 threshold. You may want to wait till you do, and we'll talk about here in a second what to do at that point. But businesses making under $3,000 are not required to get a business license. Therefore, obviously, no business tax is required. No renewal, goes without saying. Now, the next category here, the next one down, between 3,000 and 100,000 in gross, that's gross sales. Everything combined before you take out what your expenses are and everything. Gross sales receipts between 3,000 and 100,000, you're going to need what's called a minimal activity business license from your local clerk. This changed last year. It used to be between 3 and 10,000 needed a minimal license. The Tennessee Works Tax Act that passed last general session, like so in 2023, upped that threshold to 100,000. Cool, great. That takes a big burden off of a lot of small businesses because you just need a minimal license, $15. You go to your clerk every year to renew that. You don't have to mess with us with business tax. No business tax required. Just renew that directly with your clerk. I'm going to take a second here to talk about that change. If you have already established your business and you're here with us today, but you got started recently or last year and you obtained a standard license, but you don't think you need one if you're not going to meet that $100,000 threshold, we did a webinar dedicated to how to handle that last fall, business tax law changes. But I'll just go ahead and tell you, if you have a standard license and you're not making over 100,000, reach out to us. You can email us at revenue.support@tn.gov. We'll share other ways to reach out to us a little bit later, but we can fix that and bump you down to a minimal license, because for standard business license, if you hold a standard business license, you are going to be required to file business tax. So that's for businesses who make over 100,000 in annual gross sales. So if you're not making over that and you still have a standard business license, you may want to switch down to a minimal so that you're not having to file business tax. Get rid of that burden. But over 100,000, you're going to need that standard business license. You're going to be required to file a business tax return with us annually. And when you do so, when you're in compliance with the business tax requirement, we send information to the cities and counties saying, hey, this business has filed and paid, they're good to go. It's called tax clearance. We send that to your clerk, and then the clerk issues your renewed license. Okay. This new threshold, this $100,000 threshold, I don't know how long we'll refer to that as new, but it's definitely still considered new. And it's a big change in business tax law. This new threshold of 100,000 is based on a total per jurisdiction. So if you have a couple of small businesses, a couple of locations, or if you're a sole prop and you have a couple of small businesses, DBAs that you've got, you're going to look for the total of 100 as being that threshold that you're looking to meet, whether to decide whether you need a minimal or a standard. I will say that there are different rules for contractors. Class 4 contractors, those are contractors that make improvements to real property, not like IT contractors and stuff. There are some different rules, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but they're kind of in a little bit of a land of their own. Let's see here. Okay. Well, I'll get on that later. All right, who is subject to business tax? Okay, this is where the question that we got a minute ago about an out-of-state business, this might come in to help you a little bit. So definitely in-state businesses with gross sales over 100,000, like I just said, in any county or within any municipality that enacts business tax or business license. There are some exceptions that we'll discuss, but if you make over 100,000, you need to get that standard business license and file annual business tax. I will say, I'll repeat, if you have a standard business license, even if you don't make over 100, so if you register for the wrong license, you're still on the hook for business tax. So that's where you may want to reach out to us. Some people just, want to have a standard business license, and that's cool too. But out-of-state businesses. We have a whole webinar dedicated to Nexus for out-of-state businesses. That is something that I think you're going to be interested in. The person that asked about if they are going to owe business tax or taxes in Tennessee for holding events in Tennessee. If you have substantial nexus and you are engaged in activities that are subject to business tax and you have gross receipts within any county that are 100,000 or more, then you're going to be they're going to be on the hook for Tennessee business tax. I'm going to refer you, if you're an out-of-state businesses, to view this webinar, at least the PDF that goes along with the webinar. It's pretty extensive about whether or not you're required to pay register and file and pay business tax in Tennessee if you're an out-of-state business. Again, like I said, we've got special rules for contractors. It got a little bit simpler with this new business tax threshold, but we also have a whole webinar dedicated to contractors. We would be here all day if we went into all the details about out-of-state businesses and the contractor stuff, because it's pretty complex. So that's why we're referring you here to these other resources if those are industries, or if you're in, if those topics pertain to you. All right, who is not subject to business tax? Casual and isolated sales. So, you have a yard sale once a year. Your kid has a lemonade stand. You sell one car. Those are casual and isolated sales, not subject to business tax. Again, gross receipts that are under 100,000, not subject to business tax. You'll need that minimal activity license, but no standard business license and no business tax if you have gross receipts under 100K. There are some services that are exempt from business tax. Veterinary services, accounting services, engineering services, those are just a few. There's a pretty short list of services that are excluded from business tax. Some entities are excluded from business tax, like manufacturers, radio stations. There's just a few, y'all. Same with services. I'm going to refer you to our business tax manual in chapter 8 there. If you provide a service, just to check that list of services to see if that's one that you may fall into. There are some sales that are exempt from business tax too. Sales of real property. If I sell my house, even if my gross receipts are over 100,000, I don't need to register for business tax. I'm an individual. Okay. Real property. Wholesaler to wholesaler sales are exempt from business tax. There's a few other exemptions and exceptions, but not a whole lot actually. Again, if you make under 100, you'll need a minimal activity license. Over 100, standard business license, and subject to business tax. Okay, this is the nuts and bolts of business tax here. This is probably, well, it's actually about an hour's worth of information on one slide, and we have an hour-long webinar dedicated to just this, the Business Tax Basics webinar. But I'm going to break it down in some pretty simple terms pretty quickly for y'all today, right now. So here's what business tax is based on. It's your gross sales times a rate minus some deductions and credits, and then you've got the tax due. So what are gross sales? Gross sales is defined as all sales derived from products or services. People will say, well, my business didn't make any money. We're talking about gross receipts. You're not deducting out of that what your overhead, what your rent was, what you paid to employees, what you pay. Gross receipts is gross receipts. Imagine it like this. You're just taking every receipt that you have and adding that up. And that may sound like a lot, may sound unfair. It's just the way the law is written, but I will say the rates are very, very low for business tax. Very low. It's 0.00. Actually, I'll take you over there in just a minute since I'm about to talk about rates. I'll show you what they are. But so you're going to take your gross sales and multiply that by a rate. That rate is going to be based on two things. The classification you fall into. We have 5 classifications depending on what you sell or what service, or if you're a service. That's going to determine what class that you're in. Now, I'm going to show you when I take you over to the website in a minute how to determine that. If you start at your county clerk's office, though, or city clerk's office, they're knowledgeable about classifications and can help guide you in the right direction there. When we talk about registering for business tax, you can either start with them or start with us. Kind of a long story there, but they'll help you with determining your classification. The next thing, retailer or wholesaler, that's pretty simple. Businesses have to determine whether at the end of a year, actually, not at the beginning, but at the end of a year, whether 50% or more of their sales were retail sales or sales made wholesale. So that's going to determine what your rate is. When you go in to actually file your business tax return, you're going to look at those receipts from the last year and determine were the majority retail sales or wholesale sales. There are some deductions and credits. So deductions can reduce the amount of your income before you calculate the tax you owe. Credits can reduce the amount of tax that you owe. An example of a deduction is returned merchandise. Sales in interstate commerce. That's when a product that you sell is delivered to someone in another state. Amounts paid to subcontractors. If you're a class 4 contractor, those can be deducted. There are some credits such as what you've paid in your local tangible personal property tax, your personalty tax as it's known in some jurisdictions. That's a credit. Credit can be given for the amount you paid as long as it's no more than 50% of your tax liability. There's a few deductions and credits in business tax. Again, that business tax basics webinar will break down each deduction and credit that is possible for you. You want to definitely understand those because that'll make your tax liability lower. So the tax is due on the 15th day of the 4th month following your fiscal year end. When I said earlier, it's important to determine that fiscal year end. This is one of those taxes that is determined based on when your fiscal year end is. So if you've got a calendar fiscal year and that ends on December 31st, the 15th day of the 4th month looks a lot like April 15th. That's the tax day we all as individuals have in our head anyways, so pretty easy to remember that. We do have a couple of great resources. There is a webinar dedicated to how to file the business tax return. There are a lot of businesses that do this themselves. If you're a business and want to try to learn how to file your own business tax return and what you would need to do that, then I recommend checking that resource out, or a help video on our website that shows you how to do it in TENTAP. So, all right. Registering for business tax. So obtaining a standard business license automatically registers you for business tax. Our system and the local system at the county clerk's office or the city official's office, they speak to each other, okay? When you go there and get that standard business license, their system's going to talk to us and tell us, hey, that business just registered for a business license, so then we automatically have you in our account set up for a business tax account, and you're going to get a letter in the mail from us that tells you, hey, you're registered for business tax now. It'll also give you information on that letter about registering that business tax account in TENTAP. Save that letter that you get from us because that is how you will set yourself up. It makes it a lot easier to set yourself up in TENTAP because you'll have that letter ID and everything you need to just add that business tax account to your online TENTAP account. Or If you start with us, you can register just directly through the Department of Revenue on our TENTAP page. You can register if you want to zoom in. Here's kind of a screenshot of how, if you already have a TENTAP account and you're registering another location, how you would do that. You click on More and then Manage Accounts and then open a new location. If you do set up through us, either through TENTAP or through the non-log-on registration process that I'll show you later. If you set up with us and you haven't been to your local clerk yet, you will need to do that. You'll need to go to the clerk's office, city and or county and or city, and pay that $15. This is a good resource here. Which cities require business tax? All counties do. So you're definitely going to need a county license. But to determine if if the municipality that you're in, or if you live in an unincorporated part, then you won't be in a city or town. You won't have a city license. But to determine if your town, city, municipality has a business license, there is a dashboard that's great that can show you that if you're wondering. I just wanted to call your attention before we end this little business tax part of that webinar one more time, the business tax basics webinar. It's a fairly recent webinar that we had, so it's updated with all the information. If you have the PDF open, you can click on the actual photo, the pic here to take you over there, or this link takes you over to the business tax basics webinar for more in-depth information. So you've got the webinar for more in-depth information and the business tax manual. I'm going to stop for a minute here before we move on to sales tax, before we switch gears. And Billy and Dan, I'm going to ask you if anything came about in the chat. I've seen lots of stuff popping up there. Did anything come about that you'd like to address to the whole group that might be a helpful topic, or any trends there?
Yeah, for me, I'll speak, and then Dan obviously will have maybe a couple things he wants to bring up. But Megan asked, what if sales fluctuate right around the $100,000 mark each year?
It's a good question.
Well, that is a decision that doesn't really have a great answer. Okay. Because what the law says is that you owe the tax once you've exceeded the 100,000. Okay. So you might have to actually calculate what your gross sales are and maybe make a change to your account ahead of when you actually need to file. For instance, if you have a minimal activity license, which of course means you don't pay tax, then you suddenly realize, wait, I just actually went over this 100,000. I need to change this. That's when you call us or contact the county clerk or whatever, and we fix it. And then we say, okay, you're good. You can go ahead on TENTAP and file and pay the tax that's required by the law. Okay. And yes, it is sort of annoying that you might have to go back and forth. Okay. And like Katie mentioned in her presentation, there's nothing that prevents you from keeping a standard license, which means you're paying a tax. It's just that the law doesn't require you to do it unless you exceed the $100,000 gross. Okay. If that makes any sense at all. All right. And by the way, if this sounds complicated, it's because it is.
Right.
Quite honestly, so just kind of telling you. Um,
Hey, Billy, if you have a
yeah.
standard business tax account, a standard license, sorry, and you have a business tax account, but you're making under 100 and you're still required to go in and file, when you go to file your business tax, you have the option to just file the minimum there, right? Which is just $22 per
Mhm,
license.
mhm. That's
So
right.
that's something that you, if you're a business that kind of teeters on that line, that may be something you want to consider doing, is just going in and paying the minimum. So if you've just got a city, if you just got a county license, that's $22.
Mhm.
If you've got a county and a city license, that'd be 44 is the minimum.
Right. We have a number of businesses that decide to do exactly what Katie's describing, and that's just to keep a standard license at all time. Pay the money. If it's $22 for a county, 22 for a city, it looks like 44 bucks.
Hmm.
That way I don't worry about it. And these rates that Katie mentioned too, the classifications and the rates and all that stuff in that calculation. Um, the amount of tax is so super small.
I'm going to take them over to
Um,
right now, actually.
so really, unless you're a big business, some of these big stores that we see out there, big online people, stuff like that. Now they're remitting a lot of business tax to us. I had the fortune and misfortune of purchasing a car yesterday. Long story. Anyway, bottom line is on the invoice that we paid at the car dealer, which you may have encountered this as well. Business tax was on there because the dealer passed that along to us. So car dealers are another entity that would remit a good amount of business tax to us. But you as a small business, not making too much money, you're probably not going to be remitting a lot of business tax money to us, really, in any scenario. Right there, Katie's got the rates up, don't you, Katie?
Yep.
So these are decimals, by the way. Just look at how small these are, guys. So it's really, really small, but it's required if you meet the criteria that Katie mentioned. Okay. So that's pretty much it. I want to hit some of these others here too. Da, 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 da.
While you're doing
Yes.
that, I'm going to show them real quick too on the tax page. How I got here, homepage, Department of Revenues homepage, click on taxes or the tile. We'll click on the taxes tile. Our big three are right here. All the other ones are over there and over here. We're going to click on business tax. Another great resource here, due dates and tax rates. This is where I showed you the rates are, or I was showing you while Billy was talking. Was that rude of me? It's kind of like interrupting to be
Yeah, you're
scrolling through
really
a
rude,
website.
Katie. We need you to stop being so rude in the
Uh,
class.
classifications. This is where, if you want to just kind of peruse these to see where you might fall, Class 1A. This is kind of like a grocery store, food, beer for home consumption.
Hey, can I tell them a funny story?
Yes,
So class 1A is real popular. And you want to know why?
because it's the first one on the
It's the first one on
list.
the list. Don't be that guy. Don't pick
Yeah,
the first one on the list. It's not right. Okay. It
yeah,
might be right, but it probably is not right. Pick the one that fits you. If you
yeah.
don't know, call us, email us, let us help you. Okay. Because we will. Of course, if you did it wrong, let us know. We'll fix it.
I'm going to
That's what you
show
get
them
paid
real
to do.
quick because I like it. Over on, okay, and this makes me this a good opportunity to show them where the webinar video library is. So start at the top, Department of Revenues homepage. I'm going to click on taxpayer education, tax webinars. This is where you register for our webinars. Down here is our webinar video library. I'm going to show you the classification chart that I've got in the Business Tax Basics webinar. It's called Basics. So, yeah. Okay, so when you pull up all of our webinars, you click here and it's the video. You click over here and it's the PDF. So I'm just going to show you because I think I've got it in there. A good chart about that's the Nexus stuff. That's good.
While you're scanning there, Katie, um,
Here we go.
Latonia, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. You asked about $100 payment that you made to us. That is almost assuredly for franchise and excise tax, the minimum $100. They are not a business tax. I'm about 99.9%
Or a
sure
NOPA.
for
It
you.
could have been it could have been a NOPA.
It
Okay.
could have been. It could have been. And you mentioned that you didn't make any money. Yeah, but we're going to learn in franchise and excise in just a little bit that tag you're it when you're an LLC, a corporation, and that you're going to owe franchise and excise tax at least $100, no
Mm-hmm.
matter what. So that's the deal. Yeah. And Katie's got your information right there on
Yeah, so this
classifications.
is one of the slides that was from that Business Tax Basics webinar about classifications. One, these are pretty cut and dry. You just 1A, there's 5 different subtypes within one. Class 1. Class 2, very specific stuff listed here, motor vehicles, clothing. The law is very specific, but it's also a catch-all for anything that's not specifically listed anywhere else. So if there's something you sell that you don't see over here in Class 1, that you don't see specifically listed in Class 3, you're a Class 2 if it's not specifically listed somewhere else. So that's Class 2s. Class 3, a bunch of other really specific things that are laws lists. I don't know why. It's kind of random sometimes. I mean, hearing aids especially listed here. Like candy, stuff like that. So specific stuff. Class 3 is also where the services are. If you're a service related business, you're Class 3. Class 4 are contractors. 5 is industrial loan and thrift. So I want to mention too that classification is based on your dominant business activity. Okay. If you sell something, if you sell, I always like to use like Home Depot or a big store like that. They're going to sell some lumber and building materials. They're going to sell some nursery items. They're going to sell some appliances. They're going to sell, they've even got food there. They got everything, it's what their dominant sales are is what you're going to choose.
And
Place like
Katie,
craft
let me
apparel.
tag on to what you're
Yeah.
saying here too, and this is based on a question that one of the participants had here too. So talking about the classifications and let's use a class 3 business, which is services. Okay. So Katie just mentioned some of these businesses that provide services, and many businesses, as a matter of fact, that provide services are subject to registration for the license and potentially the tax, right? Okay, so that's that part. Now, remember, and Katie pointed this out in her presentation, that there are some businesses that are just exempt. Okay, they are totally exempt. Let me use this example that I like to use on veterinarians. Okay, ironically, yesterday being a busy day for me, I ended up taking my dog at lunch over to the veterinarian to get help because he's not feeling good, right? So we did that. And when I left with the bill, there was no no business tax on there would apply to that because that's a veterinary service. Okay. So that's fine. But a veterinarian could actually sell things in their shop. They could sell leashes, they could sell food, they could sell tangible personal property. So if they did that, they might need a business license to cover them because of those sales, but they don't have a requirement to even have a license, much less pay a tax if they're truly exempt. Okay. So an accountant, a doctor, a dentist, not selling anything tangible, so to speak, just providing a service. They don't even need a business license or even pay attention to anything we've been talking about because they're done. Nothing, zero. Now, other taxes do apply, obviously, and Katie will be going through those, but that's an important thing to know. I was going to ask Dan if he saw anything he wanted to bring up.
There's so many. There's a lot of confusion about the classifications. Katie, is there any way you can go back and take a look at? There's a lot of questions about, hey, I do X, Y, and Z. What classification would that be? So can you show them where they would find that?
So where I was just showing you, let me go back over the web, was our, I've shown you a couple places. I was just showing you that we have it on the Business Tax Basics webinar. There's some good information about classification. Here's the tax page, the
Put a
business tax
link
page.
in the chat for
Yeah,
classifications. Thank you.
I'm gonna put a link directly from
Yeah,
this
just
over
copy
there.
that. Yeah, there you go.
When I'm in the web browser mode, I can't easily get over
Oh,
to
that's
the
okay. I'll
chat.
do it for you,
Yeah.
Katie. I got you.
But while you're doing that, I'm going to show you where in the business tax manual there's information about classifications as well. So I showed you earlier how to get to all of our manuals, and that was by clicking on tax resources and then tax guidance. But right now I'm in the business tax page that I got to by clicking on taxes. So I'm in business tax. You can also get to our manuals from the tax page. I'm going to click on tax guidance. And this is where, again, I'm in the business tax page specifically. I can click on there, that manual, manual for military members and veterans, any articles specifically about business tax, important notices about business tax. So this is specific to the tax page that I'm on, which is business tax right now. I'm going to click on the tax manual and click specifically on the business tax manual. And there's a whole chapter dedicated to classifications. There we go, Chapter 5, classifications. So this is where there are details about each classification. If whatever it is, one thing you could do, whatever it is you sell, you could type Control F and just type that word into there to see where it shows up. to determine your classification. And again, if you start at your county clerk's office or your city clerk's office, they can help you determine your classification too, or you can reach out to us specifically. We've got a lot of people on here today. I don't know if we could answer everybody's questions about their specific classifications, but you should be able to find it. I think that the manual or the webinar are two great places to go to figure out what classification.
Debbie asked an interesting question. She says, are the business tax requirements the same for all entity types? She has a single member LLC. The very quick answer on that is absolutely. It doesn't matter if you're a corporation, LLC, sole proprietor, whatever. What matters is gross sales, okay, like we talked about earlier, and the type of business you are, per this nice little formula that Katie has out here. And somebody had mentioned in chat also, and Dan, I think, addressed it as well. Retailer or wholesaler, when you're selling to an end user, you are retailing that. Okay. And most of the time on services, class 3, you're almost always going to be providing the service to the end user. Okay.
People get confused by that a lot, Billy, don't they? Because the word
They do.
retail makes you feel like a thing, but services, a retail sale of a service is
Yeah,
a thing too.
it's sort of unusual, but it there is a possibility you could wholesale a service, but rare, very rare. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, this all sounds complicated. It kind of is. So when you get stuck, let us know. And then Katie's going to go at the very end of the presentation and make sure that you guys know exactly how to contact us. So if you've got specific issues that we haven't addressed today because of time constraints and that, we will answer your question. All you got to do is email us or call us. And we're
Right.
actually caught up pretty good with workload
Okay.
right now.
Great.
We will pop your answer back super fast. So there you
Okay.
go.
I think I'm going to go ahead and finish and get through sales tax, and then we'll take a little break after that. How about that?
Okay.
All right. I did just see, and it disappeared as soon as they just kind of fade away, but somebody just asked about workers' comp insurance. That's another one of those taxes that's paid through the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce. Workers' comp is not we do not handle workers' comp taxes and insurance. That's not us. Same as unemployment insurance tax. Okay, so this is always kind of hard to do. You have to switch gears in your brain to a different tax type here. Okay, we were just talking about business tax. That's the one that's linked to your business license. Most businesses are required to have either a minimal or a standard business license. If you have a standard over 100, you owe business tax. Okay, that was business tax. We're going to leave all that behind. Classifications, retailer, wholesaler. Get that out of your brain for a minute because now we're going to talk about sales tax. We're switching gears. All right. We have a great manual for sales tax as well that I showed you. There's the link to it. All right. Lots of information on this one slide here too. This is sales tax basics on one page. The tax applies to dealers engaged in the business of making sales of taxable products and services in Tennessee. What products are taxable? What services are taxable? We'll talk about that here in a second. The retailers are responsible for remitting sales tax to us that they collect from their customers. Now, use tax is like the counterpart to sales tax. We're going to be focusing on the sales tax part. Use tax is usually paid by individuals, not always, but usually by individuals that have purchased something out of state and they bring it into state and they have to pay use tax on it. Also, if you buy a car from an individual, not from a dealership, but from an individual, and you didn't pay tax on that to that person, probably, then you're going to go register at your clerk's office, right? You'll pay the sales tax then. But really, what we're going to be focusing on today is general sales tax basics because this is a new business workshop, right? You want to know is what I sell subject to sales tax, either the service or the product that you sell, and also what can I buy tax free and who doesn't have to pay sales tax to me? Those are the big questions you're probably asking. So we're going to break that down. All right. So sales of tangible personal property, things you can touch, see, smell, whatever. Sales of tangible personal property, TPP, are generally taxable unless specifically exempted by law. An example of what's exempt, we'll break this down later, purchases made by an exempt entity. The product itself may be exempt, like certain healthcare products are exempt. If the usage, the way the purchaser is going to be using it, like manufacturing, agricultural, they might have an exemption for that. But for the most part, things are taxable. And for the most part, services are not unless specifically listed by the law. An example here, this is kind of small. You may need to click the zoom on your screen. The taxable services are repair, installation, or cleaning of tangible personal property, lodging services and rooms, short-term space rental for making sales, parking of storage and vehicles, parking or storage of vehicles. Those are an example of services subject to sales tax. Also, if the service is lumped in, and you see here part of the sales price of a tangible item, then it's included all together, and sales tax is based on the whole thing. We have a whole webinar dedicated to services. So if you are a business that's going to be providing services, you may find that helpful. Okay, so in a nutshell, rates, we've got a state rate, which in Tennessee is 7, plus a local rate, and those vary. I think it's no more than 2.75% is our local rates, and that's going to equal a total sales tax due. As you probably know, if you're here in Tennessee, we have one of the highest in the whole country, but hey, we don't have an income tax, right? So that's great. There are some special rates that we'll break down for you, such as food and food ingredients. Digital products, specified digital products have just a set local rate. There's this really tricky thing called single article that we have a whole webinar dedicated to that as well, but there are some special rates. Okay, next question is, and this goes back to that person who asked the question in the beginning of being out of state, and there's something that they have events. Amusements actually are taxable. I didn't mention that on the previous slide, but this is going to let you know whether you have nexus or not in for sales tax in Tennessee. The first question you're going to ask yourself is, does the business have a physical presence? If the answer is yes, next question is, if the in-state tangible personal property sales meet a threshold of $4,800 or more annually, then yes, you need to register for sales tax. If you have in-state service sales of services, one of those services that we just said is subject to sales tax. If those services exceed an amount of $1,200 annually, then yes, you need to register and pay sales tax. If those thresholds are not met, then you are not required to register for sales tax. So if you're not located here in Tennessee, if you're an out-of-state business and you meet an economic nexus sales threshold of $100,000 within a 12-month period to customers in Tennessee, yes, you need to file for Tennessee sales tax. If substantial nexus is met, you need to register and file for Tennessee sales tax. If not, you do not need to register. But more information about this, if you're an out-of-state business, I referred you earlier to an out-of-state nexus webinar. We also have a specific one for sales tax. It's called Reporting Out-of-State Sales by Delivery Destination, that will also give you a lot of information. If you meet that economic nexus threshold of 100, if you're selling to over $100,000 worth of services or product in-state to Tennessee in-state customers, then you'll want to check out this webinar for sure. I want to break down real quick, actually, substantial nexus. Substantial nexus examples are selling taxable services in Tennessee, telecommunication services to subscribers in Tennessee, or leasing, renting, repairing, installing, or assembling tangible personal property in Tennessee. That's an example of selling items that are subject to tax here. Using employees, agents, or independent contractors, third parties, company-owned vehicles, contract carriers to solicit or fulfill sales in Tennessee. Again, substantial nexus. If you're out of state, again, watch that out of state nexus webinar or and also this reporting out-of-state sales by delivery destination. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that now, and we won't because most of our attendees are all in state. But hopefully those resources can help you in addition to the manual. Okay, we're going to break down some of these rates here. As I mentioned earlier, Tennessee general sales tax rate for most tangible property and services is 7%. All right. There is a state rate on food that is 4%. That is not prepared food that you're going to have in a deli or a restaurant. We're talking about food ingredients, basically, things that you're going to buy at a grocery store. This notice right here will detail what is considered food and food ingredients. Let's see, I don't have information on this. I haven't updated this slide yet. There was a law that passed that just this current General Assembly that said that jurisdictions, so local jurisdictions can set a lower food rate as well. But this 4% is just a state 4% rate. And typically in the past, it's always been 4% plus the local rate, okay? But now local rates can vary on food. More to come about that. That has not come into play yet, but because it just passed. Like I said, there's local rates. Any county or incorporated city can levy local sales tax. The rate is either going to be 2.75 or less. Here is a link over to a dashboard that will show you what the local rates are. So if you have a in-state business and you are selling, that rate is going to be based on where you're located, not where your customer's located, okay? Now, if you're selling to out-of-state people, you're not going to need to charge, or you're not going to charge Tennessee sales tax if it's getting delivered to them out of state, but you may need to look at those. You may have nexus in another state. Tennessee touches what, 7 different states, so we have a lot of our retailers here in this state. A lot of businesses sell often to out-of-state customers, and you may have tax nexus in another state. We can't tell you about that though. I don't know anything about tax laws in any other states except for this one. Okay, so I mentioned earlier there is a special rate for specified digital products. We have a whole webinar dedicated to this. This is audio visual products. That is a state rate of 7 and then a set standard local rate of 2.5%. All right, single articles, again, a whole webinar dedicated to that. If you sell high-priced items that are a single item, like a piece of furniture, a vehicle, a piece of clothing that might be over $1,600, so we're talking high dollar items, maybe jewelry, where it's a single thing, not a set, but a single thing, then there's a special taxation rule for those. It's pretty complex. This is kind of the basics of it, but again, we have a whole hour-long webinar dedicated to it. So not going to go into that all right now, but basically over $1,600 in price, the entire price is taxed at the state rate of 7%. The first $1,600 is taxed at the local rate. And any amount between $1,600 and $3,200 is a set rate of 2.75. I think this still stands. We've looked into this before, and I don't think there's another state in the whole country that has something like this. I don't know why we have it, but we do. So if you sell high-priced items, check out that single article tax webinar. Okay, we're going to talk for a minute about sales tax exemption. These are just examples. There's a lot more information about exemptions in Chapter 18. If you think that any of the, well, honestly, a lot of these are you're going to have customers that may come in saying, I don't know sales tax because of this or that. I'm going to recommend to you, to actually everyone here, to read Chapter 18 of our sales tax manual because this is pretty important. There are usage-based examples. An example is pollution control. It's going to be a customer coming to you that wants to buy something that you're selling, and they hand you an exemption certificate for this. The key here is you want to make sure that they have an exemption certificate. They can't just tell you that they're exempt. They have to have an exemption certificate, and it has to be the purchase being made. The payment for that purchase has to match the name of the person giving you an exemption certificate. That goes for any exemptions. Any of these that we're going to talk about here in a minute. Any exemption certificate that you ever see come across your way, you can verify them with us, and I'll show you where you can do that. But just make sure that the payment also is in the name of that exemption holder, the name that's on that letter. Certain products are exempt, not very many, but textbooks, school meals, some healthcare items. Again, more about that in Chapter 18. This is a big one, entity-based. So government, U.S. government, state of Tennessee, and Tennessee counties and municipalities. So not other states. All right, so we're just talking about U.S. government, our state, and then local governments within Tennessee. They do have to have an exemption form as well before they can be exempt. Nonprofits can purchase items tax-free from you. That has to be supported by either a Tennessee exemption certificate or the federally issued 501c3 document. Farmers, I mentioned earlier, we have that ag manual, the agricultural manual. Farmers, we like to take care of our farmers in this state, and for good reason. They, something you may sell is exempt. Anything that a farmer is going to use 50% or more in their farming is going to be exempt, other than vehicles and a few other things, but they do need a valid exemption certificate that's in date. And again, the payment being made has to be in the name that is on that exemption certificate. Same with qualified manufacturers. Also, every business that registers for a sales tax account has the ability, you get it automatically when you register for sales tax. You get this thing called a certificate of resale. A business can present that certificate of resale to a retailer to buy products tax-free that they intend on reselling. So if you're a business selling something, a business might come to you and present you with a certificate of resale. If they do so, then you can sell the product tax-free to them. Again, you want to verify that it is the payment is made in the name of the person or business that is listed on the certificate of resale. These are issued by location. All right, so each location needs their own certificate of resale. They don't expire, but they're no longer valid when a location closes. And just to reiterate, they can only be used for items intended for resale. I talked a minute ago on the very first slide about sales tax that we're not going to talk a lot about use tax here, but there is a aspect of use tax that ties in with certificates of resale. If you're a business that uses a certificate of resale to buy things that you're intended to sell, of course, right? But then you end up pulling something from from those items that you bought using that certificate of resale, you end up pulling from that to use it in your business. Let's say you're selling cleaning products or you're selling candles, and you decide you want to take, and you bought these candles using your resale certificate because you're going to resell them. But you decide to pull one of those candles out to light it and use in your store. All right, that you would identify that, you would pull that out and pay sales tax on that, or use tax on it on your sales tax return. There's more details about that in a webinar that we have about completing the sales tax return. There's a line that just says items that you have bought using your resale certificate that you used. So that happens sometimes. I will say some tips on this as well. We do have a webinar dedicated to it, but for audit purposes, it's a good idea to keep if you're a business purchasing items using this resale certificate, audit is going to highly recommend to you that you keep those purchases separate from other things. Let's say you go to Costco to buy a bunch of stuff. Some stuff you're going to be buying for resale, and then other things you're buying just to clean your store, or some furniture for your store or whatever. You're going to want to make that actually two separate purchases, because you're going to use that certificate of resale only for the items that you're intending on reselling. And you do not want to end up in an audit on that, trust me. So keep that real clean. Another item about resale certificates that I want to specifically mention to you is if you are a business that is selling items to other businesses or entities that present you with exemption certificates or a certificate of resale, you want to keep copies of that. You need to retain copies of those certificates that you are accepting and not charging the customer sales tax on. Before I move on from that, I'm going to show you where on our website you can verify if an exemption certificate is valid or not. All right, so heading back over to our homepage, tn.gov/revenue. We're going to go over to TENTAP. It says e-file and pay, but we're going to do something else there. All right, this is TENTAP. We are going to go down to, I just forgot exactly where it is. I think it's here. Oh, no, it's under information and inquiries. Click view options under information and inquiries. And this is where you can do a sales and use tax certificate lookup. All right, verify the sales tax certificate. You'll choose the certificate type from a drop down here, and then put the exemption number that you're seeing right in front of you there on that certificate and click submit, and it will tell you if it's valid or not. The only thing you're not going to see here is government exemptions, because the government exemption is actually like a fillable form that governments have to give you. Your key with those government exemptions is, and make sure like just some random Joe Blow is not presenting you with a government one, is that the payment has to be in the form of from the government. Another thing you're not going to see here is that a nonprofit is able to show you their nonprofit status through the IRS. We cannot verify that, but really we recommend that all nonprofits get their exemption through us. Makes that a lot cleaner process too, easier for them. Okay, good resource there. Registering for sales tax. This is something you will do on TENTAP, where I just was. Thinking about if I want to go back over there now. I don't think I will, but you register for sales tax on TENTAP. One thing I want to really stress to you here, I mentioned it earlier about how once you put the start date for your business and register for a tax account, it kind of opens up that faucet flowing, and you are liable at that point. So you are going to be liable for filing a sales tax return beginning from the date you open that sales tax account, even if no sales are made. You're going to need to go in and file a monthly return. Even if you haven't opened yet, you're going to have to file a 0 return each month until you open. That is required. So out-of-state dealers can register through TENTAP or by accessing the streamlined sales tax registration system through a certified service provider. When is sales tax due? Sales tax is due on the 20th day of the month following the period. Once account is opened, just reiterating this, filing must begin even if no sales are needed. So let's say you open up your sales tax account today because you need that certificate of resale so you can just go start buying stuff that you're going to then resell here in a couple months when you officially open. If you open it today, what is today? July something, 10th. Your July sales tax is going to be due, return is going to be due deadline of August 20th for July, and you're going to have to go in between August 1st and August 20th, and even if you haven't sold anything, just file 0. It is so easy. It takes you about 2 seconds to do. So sales tax accounts.
Hey, Katie,
Yes.
I wanted to throw something in right here just because it's on topic, if you don't mind, because we also
I
had
don't
some
mind.
questions about it. So, filing the sales tax return timely is quite important, which makes perfect sense, obviously. But at the same time, you can file the return early. You know what I mean? So today's the 10th, right? So if you're trying to file June, you could file it today, and you can schedule the payment to come out on the 20th. That way the government doesn't have your money any earlier than it needs to, but you can be done today if you would just go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
That's super critical because we do encounter a number of taxpayers that will wait, quite honestly, to the last minute to file and pay, and something will happen. Their password is wrong in TENTAP, or something odd happens, and it's 10 o'clock at night on the last night, and they're trying to reach out to us. Well, guess what? We're not there. We're not. So So just knock it out, you know, just get that done and you won't have to worry about it anymore. Let's just check that off your list, move on.
It's
You
so
know,
sad to see penalties and interest accruing for
we don't
something like
want to
waiting
charge
till the
people
last minute.
penalty and interest. We
Mm-mm.
honestly, truly don't want to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but we have to do it because the law makes us do it.
Mm.
Okay. So let us help you avoid any extra costs at all. You shouldn't have to pay the government a dime more than what you really owe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I mean that with all my heart. So anyway, I just had to throw that in and I'll leave you alone, Katie. Thank you.
Before I move on to this, thank you, Billy. This next point here, I do want to say something I haven't mentioned yet. I know that on the very first sales tax basic slide, I said dealers are responsible for this, but you know, you're going to be collecting this tax from your customer. You're not paying it, you're collecting it from your customer and then just remitting it over to us. You're like holding on to it and then giving it to us. But you are responsible for it whether you collect it or not. So if you've been selling something that you haven't been collecting sales tax on, you still need to then you need to pony up for it actually. So that's why you need to make sure you're actually passing that charge along to your customers if you need to, because that's the way sales tax works. Yeah, there's a little boutique that I like to go to in this little small town that I live in that periodically they say sales tax free. Well, there are some official sales tax holidays of some items, you know, the back to school thing, or every year the legislature, some not every year, but sometimes has a sales tax exemption where they temporarily have no sales tax on certain types of items. But this little boutique, they choose to pay sales tax on behalf of their customers for that weekend or whatever. It's a marketing thing. They want us to come in there, so they're saying you don't have to pay sales tax on anything this weekend. Well, they're having to pay it. If I'm not paying it when I go shop at their store, then that little boutique is actually covering it for me. So that's the way that works. Sales tax accounts are going to be initially set up monthly. We do have information on our website about switching to either annual or quarterly filing if you make under a certain amount. More information about that on our website. We do have some helpful resources here about filing. We did a whole webinar on completing the sales tax return. We actually just redid that one recently because enough things had changed that we needed to redo it. Looks like Dan just put that threshold in there. Thank you, Dan. Every once in a while, I look over to see the chats that are popping up. I try not to because I'm too ADD and I'll get distracted. See? All right, we have a help video about filing the sales tax return. There's a link to that. And some pages in our sales tax manual that are specifically dedicated to information about filing the sales tax return. Once you get into TENTAP, we'll talk more about how to register how to add your tax accounts in TENTAP. Once you're in there, there's one thing I just want to point out for both business tax, sales tax, for all your different tax accounts. Once you have them in there, you'll click on View File Returns to file the return. But specifically for sales tax, a question is going to come up that says, do you want to submit a file via vendor, basically to use vendor software? What does that say? I need to zoom in. Will you be submitting a file using your software? That's real common with sales tax because point of sale systems honestly a lot of times are going to be set up for you to have the items that you're selling, to have all of it just already plugged in there. Not everybody uses that. I get that, but especially really small businesses. But a lot of times now with these Square and stuff like that, it's already predetermined in there, and you can just submit the software. We do have information about submitting software. It just makes submitting your sales tax return really easy. You go to tn.gov/revenue, click on e-filing information, and then electronic filing using a software vendor. Some good information there if you wanted to make it a little easier for you. Before we end here, just one last push for the sales tax basics webinar. Spend an hour. If you're already on this new business workshop, if you're in here or you're watching this, you care enough, and that is fantastic. Spend another hour in all your spare time and watch the sales tax basics webinar just to ingrain it in you. I'm going to recommend that. So actually, that is the end of the sales tax part. What we're going to do is take a 5-minute break and then come back and talk about the questions that y'all have put in the chat about sales tax. So let's come back at 10:12 Central Time, 11:12 Eastern Time. All right, I'll put that in the chat for you, and we'll see you in 5 minutes. give everyone another minute or so. Let's see. Billy, Dan says he needs one more minute. Let's give everybody another minute. How about that?
Well, if you insist, Katie, this
Okay.
is your show, your world. We're just living in your world, okay?
That's right.
By the way, can you please repeat all the things you've brought up earlier and just discuss all of them?
Sure.
It's a lot of information, guys.
You can
A
watch the
lot to
video later, Billy.
digest. What's that?
You can watch the video later.
Oh, just watch the video? Okay.
I stepped away. Did we get a lot of questions about sales tax in
Yeah,
the
we
chat?
got quite a
Okay.
few questions, and many of the questions are very, very good. In fact,
Cool.
all of them really are. We're you, Katie, as we come back in here and you're spinning back up, you want to talk about CPE because we've got a
Sure.
lot of questions about that.
Right. Yeah, sure. As you leave this webinar, there's going to be a survey that's just like 2 questions. Basically, what did you think of it? And then the other question says, do you need CPE credit? You just answer yes to that, and we will issue you a CPE certificate. Simple as that.
Just that simple.
I think we can go ahead and get started, Billy. Dan
What is
can join us in a minute.
CPE? Continuing professional education.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you don't need credits because you're an accountant or something like that, or a lawyer or somebody, then don't worry about it. You're good.
Tasha Williams asks, I sell
Yeah,
candles.
understand.
If I burn a candle for a sales event, is that the same as for personal reasons? First off, I think we might need some samples of the candle before we can give an answer.
He's joking. He is not committing.
Yes, that would be a
an
gift, and I can't take
activity that
gifts.
is.
So
No,
that was a joke.
We're not asking for things, but it's kind of funny. But
That's a perfect
yeah,
example of using it.
if you use your product at a sales event, if I'm selling beer and I'm giving away free samples, what do I do about the tax about that?
Yeah, that is using it.
yes, that is withdrawing it from inventory. So if you receive that candle on a resale certificate and then you're using it, then you should pay use tax on that candle. Okay. And that, like Katie said, use tax is the companion to sales tax. But it's its own bear, and we probably are not going to go too deep into that. And Tasha, you say that you manufacture the candles. It gets it to be a little bit more complicated there because you're taking raw products and turning them into to a final product. And we would probably need to know a lot more about what you're doing to operating and making candles to see if you're a manufacturer as defined by sales tax law in Tennessee, because there's some specifics. Okay. There's also some tax advantages too that I won't bore the whole group with here on that. But we're going to share our email address and phone numbers later, and we want you to note those. And guys, we would love to answer every one of your questions, Dan and Katie and I. It's not going to be possible. This just can't, because we have a large group. You know, we've got upwards of 150 people here today, so that's quite a few. We used to do these in live a long time ago in front of people, like 15 people. So this is way different, you know. So we're glad that we can be with so many of you today, as far as that goes too. Margaret, you want to know if we're going to post all the questions and answers at some point? I don't think there's a way to do that, Katie. Do you?
No, if we don't if we don't get around to your question that you've asked, or if you can't find the answer, you check our resources and can't find it, then like Billy said, you can reach out to us. The other way, if you want to listen to the recording of the whole thing again, yes, but we don't post the Q&A anywhere. There's a lot of
I've got one from Christy here that I think is really important. And Christy, thanks for being brutally honest. And that's exactly what we need. All right. I was not sure how to do the taxes, she says. I've been paying when I received a letter from the state logged in now, she means to the TENTAP system.
Mhm.
Is this showing, it is showing taxes paid and due since January. How do you take care of it? Okay, first of all, guess what? Not the first person to make a mistake.
Mhm.
Don't worry about it. Okay. Number two, you're likely seeing a large balance in the TENTAP account based on assessments. Okay. Assessments are things that we put on every account by law that say because you didn't file and pay, you are going to owe this much money. Now, these assessments are typically very high and usually way more than you would ever owe. So the way to get rid of them is quite simple. File the actual tax return for the period involved or periods involved and pay the tax. Okay. What you'll end up with is once you do that, the assessment actually goes away completely and you're left with a small, you typically anyway, smaller penalty and interest charge. Okay, which you can send in an additional payment for that, or you can actually request a penalty waiver. Now we do not waive interest because we can. There's no law in Tennessee that allows us to waive interest. It's not in the statutes, but we can work with you on the penalties in some cases and are glad to do it. But you can solve your own problem just by filing and paying. Okay. But the other thing, and Katie and I sort of have this discussion quite often with different taxpayers and Dan as well. If we send you a letter of any type and you don't understand the letter, please, for whatever you do, don't ignore it. Okay. This would go with the IRS too. So, you know, if any sort of government agency is sending you a letter, there's a reason. And it's you typically it's because there's a problem. Okay. So we can only help you solve the problem if you can meet us halfway. Okay. So sticking the letter away, or like a man told me one time, he said he got something from the state of Tennessee. He didn't know what it was, so he threw it away. Now, guys, that's not a thing. Okay. Don't do that. All right. Y'all are all smarter than that, I'm sure. Okay. Just address your situation.
In the
Okay. And
past
let
few
us help
years,
you.
we've made our letters better and better. Not all of them are perfect, and some can be a little bit confusing sometimes, but we've really put, Department of Revenue's really put a good effort into making the letters as clear as possible. But even with that, sometimes they're confusing. I was helping a friend deal with a situation the other day, and he got, I won't say which state agency it was, but he got a letter from another one, not ours, and the letter was so confusing. I get it, y'all. I mean, these letters are, it is confusing. And a lot of people, Christy, pay that, they get that notice of proposed assessment in the mail, and they kind of
Mhm.
initially freak out and they just pay it because they don't understand. And I mean, it does explain it in there, but it can be a little bit confusing. And we're going to talk in a minute, a little bit later, about tax compliance and a good resource we have for you there. But you're, like Billy said, you're not alone. People often just think that's a tax bill and they're trying to do the right thing, and you just pay it, which you may owe a whole lot less. Those
That's a
typical sales tax NOPAs, NOPA means, stands for Notice of Proposed Assessment. If like if you're a new business and you set up a sales tax account and you didn't file sales tax for a few months, you're going to get this notice of proposed assessment. And I think those, they used to be at least $500 per month or
right.
something, like crazy high amount, which, yeah,
So, but
you don't
going
know.
back one more time, we don't want you to pay $500.
No.
We want you to pay what you owe plus, okay, a little bit of late charges for penalty and interest in that. Okay. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Um, you know, honestly, guys, we have several dozen, more than that, really, taxpayers or taxpayer services people that have a job, and our job is to help you. That's what we do all day long, every day at work. Okay, so put us to work. Let's go. You know, let us help you fix whatever situation you're in, or if you don't understand something, or you want to come to one of our other webinars that Katie and I and others do, please do. You know, that's it. And I'm going to brag for a quick second. Um, you're not going to find too many other states out there that do things in as much detail as we do. Our commissioner, our governor, and governors past and commissioners past have always had a taxpayer friendly attitude, and that's we benefit from that. Okay, in our state, so we're there to help you. And but again, don't feel overwhelmed because Katie's exposed you to
A
Pandora's box
lot.
of taxes this morning. Okay,
A
it's
lot.
a lot. If you feel like, wow, this is crazy a lot, because it is a lot. And but you don't have to know everything right away. It's not something that's really possible, quite honestly.
This workshop could be a week long.
Oh yeah, we could
All
talk
day,
about
every
this
day for a
stuff.
week. It could be a
Well,
week long.
when we train our staff, we take multiple weeks to train them on just basic stuff that they have to know in order to be able to get on the phone to help you or whatever. Okay, so it takes time. So yeah, don't feel bad. All right, I think that can be quite. Katie, I'm not sure that was much else that we need to talk about. I'm not
Wanna move
seeing
along?
tons,
I'm
so we can
hoping
go
we
on to
have
the
some
next.
time at the end. If
Yeah,
I
we'll
can,
take time. We'll take time.
well,
Sure.
hopefully, I'm going to try to rush through this. Not
Yeah,
rush
that's
through,
right.
but
You've got a lot more to cover.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but you know what? The biggest part is over with. That's good. Yeah.
Well, and I hope that we've shared enough resources with you too, kind of to study afterwards to to go and view these basics webinars and stuff like that to give you a little bit more. All right, we're going to spend the next little bit talking about a few other taxes, mainly F&E, and then we'll just barely touch on the others because the business tax, sales tax, and franchise excise tax are the main ones. Franchise excise tax, we do have a manual for that. It's a little bit of a more complicated tax. It very much mimics a federal return in a lot of ways. There's lots of schedules. We have a whole unit dedicated just to franchise and excise tax because it's a little bit more complex. All right. We're just going to barely touch on the surface of it. But here's a link to the F&E, as we call it, tax manual. So again, here's our a bazillion things crammed into one slide about F&E, tax basics here. Interestingly, so F&E is franchise, it's two taxes rolled into one, franchise tax plus excise tax. Franchise tax just got a lot simpler. With this current General Assembly session, a law passed. It used to be the greater of the business's net worth or assets, basically, the amount of tangible and real property that the company owned. But that was reported, was called Schedule G. This recent General Assembly session basically just eliminated Schedule G. So moving forward, so for now, we just have a whole new way of looking at franchise and excise tax. Franchise tax is just your net worth, and it's there's a calculation there, but it's a percentage of that. Plus, excise tax is net earnings for the tax year, and that combined makes the F&E tax. We do have a webinar on F&E basics, but we are going to be the one that you see right now on our uh, in our webinar video library. If you went and watch that, you can look at that, but it's still going to talk about franchise tax being a little bit more complex. We're re-recording the F&E basics webinar. I think it's coming up this coming October, but really that's been the only change that I think, but that's just such a big change that franchise tax is different now, simpler now. All right, so franchise plus excise equals the F&E tax. F&E tax is one of those that is the due date is based on your fiscal year. This timeline that you're looking at here is going to assume an entity's fiscal year is 12/31. By law, the F&E return is due on the 15th day of the fourth month following the end of your fiscal year. So that looks like April 15th again, right? Unlike business tax and sales tax, there is an option to file an extension for F&E. I didn't mention that with business tax and sales tax, but there's no extensions with those. With F&E, just like with your federal return, you can file an extension. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. It gives you, if you file a valid extension, you get a 7-month extension. That changed a few years ago. It used to be a 6-month extension. All the CPAs love our new 7-month extension rule here in Tennessee. So again, assuming a 12/31 fiscal year end, if you file an extension, that gives you until November 15th. But you have to either pay the return, pay the extension or pay what's called a $100 minimum if you meet the requirements for a $100 minimum. There are certain criteria that require you by law to make 4 estimated payments every year. They're not quite quarterly. If you look at them on a calendar, they're not quite every 3 months. But again, based on a calendar year end of 12/31, those estimated payments, the first one is going to be due on 4/15, the next one on June 15th, and then on September 15th, and then the fourth one is going to be due on January 15th. Okay, who is liable for F&E? I kind of should have started with that, right? All for-profit foreign and domestic entities that are chartered, qualified, or registered in Tennessee or doing business in Tennessee must file the F&E return and pay at least the minimum tax. So, I mentioned earlier that corporations and LLCs and general partnerships have to register, have to charter through the Tennessee Secretary of State. You also are required to file an annual F&E return. Something to keep in mind when, a lot of people will get advice that, oh, you need to make sure that you're an LLC. Well, that's not always the case, and I will not even begin to give you legal advice about what kind of entity you need to be. But just so you know, there is an extra tax obligation if you are an LLC or corporation or general partnership. We're going to talk for a minute here about the F&E extension. To receive that extension, the taxpayer has to pay on or before the due date either 90% of the current period's liability, 100% of the previous period's liability, or $100 if the previous period does not exist. If you do that, you automatically get an exemption. Also, if you have filed a federal exemption, it automatically qualifies you for the state F&E exemption. There's more information about that in our F&E manual as well. That minimum filing. So more information about particulars of the minimal filing, and if you qualify for that is going to be on page 159 in our F&E manual, but it's very easy. I just helped someone do this day before yesterday. You do not have to log into TENTAP. As I was mentioning earlier, the F&E return is pretty complex, especially if you're not a tax person. For your typical business owner, the whole F&E return is pretty complex. Well, if you're just filing the minimum return, there's a way easier way to do that without even logging into TENTAP. You have to have some basic information about your business. You'll need your F&E account number and your EIN number. That's a redundancy. Your EIN. And then from the TENTAP page, you just click on the returns tile and then review return links and then minimum $100 F&E return. It'll walk you through a few things. The whole process takes about 1 minute, and I'm not even kidding. It takes about 1 minute as long as you have your account number and your entity, your FEIN, then you're good to go with doing that.
Hey, Katie, can I give you
Yes.
the group one thing? So here's the thing. We encounter this regularly. When you're doing this filing, like Katie, you just mentioned something real small, but it's actually real big. You've got to have an account number. You have to register for a franchise and excise tax account. We'll be talking about TENTAP a little bit more later, I'm sure. But just to point this out, you can't just go to this link and like, I'm going to pay my $100. Well, guess what? We got to know where we're putting the money, and we have to have an account to put the money in. So you got to start with that. And sometimes people get confused and they say, well, I registered with the Secretary of State's office, so that means I have an account. No, it does not. It's apples and oranges. Okay, so you've got to really do both. Okay, Secretary of State's over here, and on the other side is the Department of Revenue. Need that account. Okay, thanks.
I think one of the reasons why people get confused with that, and it's understandable, when we were talking about business tax earlier, we're switching gears, but with business tax, once you get that license from your clerk's office, you're automatically registered for a business tax account. But it's, like Billy said, it's not the same once you register with Secretary of State. That doesn't automatically. Now, I will say we share information with the Secretary of State in that every business that does register through them, they share that business's information with us so that we know who's liable for F&E. So if you've registered with the Secretary of State and not with us yet, you're going to get a letter from us eventually that says, hey, we see that you registered with the Secretary of State. You haven't yet registered for an F&E account, so you need to. Likewise, we let the Secretary of State know who has registered for an F&E account, because that means they're also going to need to register with them. So I don't know if they handle that the same way or send letters out saying you registered for an F&E account, not yet with us, but the two are not associated in that they automatically create accounts for the other. Anyways, all right. Moving along here. Estimated payments. So whether this is going to let you know it's pretty simple whether or not you are going to owe those quarterly or for estimated payments. Taxpayers are required to make estimated tax payment when there is an F&E liability of $5,000 or more. So if you're going to end up owing $5,000 or more for both the prior tax year and the current. So there's your criteria. $5,000 is your tax liability for both last year and this current one. Then you're going to need to make quarterly payments. Showed you on that little timeline a couple slides ago. The first one is going to be due on the 4th month, 15th day of the 4th month. So April 15th, June 15th, September 15th, and January 15th is the final one. And all that is those specific dates I just mentioned are assuming a 12/31 calendar fiscal year end. If you have a different fiscal year end, you would make those adjustments there. But you don't want to end up having to pay penalty and interest because of having a deficient or no quarterly payments also. It bothers me to call them quarterly payments. We call them that, but they're really not quarterly quite. Anyways, 4 payments, estimated payments. All right, that is all we're going to talk about F&E. That sounds kind of crazy, I know, because it's a it's a very important tax, and it's a tax that a lot of businesses are liable for. Again, if you're a corporation, if you're an LLC, if you're a general partnership, this applies to you. But it's almost just too complex to even put into just this one little short session. And I'll be honest with you, even the F&E Basics webinar doesn't go into too much detail, but that F&E manual does, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. But yeah, we also have a ton of webinars about F&E. Before I move on, I'm going to go back to our website and show you something over in the webinar video library. Specific to F&E, we're going to go to the top, tn.gov/revenue. Where was I going? Oh yeah, going to go down to taxpayer education and webinars. We're going to scroll down to the library, and you can search. If you click the top of the column, you can search by just F&E if you want to. Let's show all of them. Oh, 61. Well, it always baffles me when I see how many of these webinars we've done. It makes me proud too. We want to help you guys. That's our goal. Okay, so look how many, starting right here, how many F&E webinars we've done. So this is going to really, if you want to watch any of these, affordable housing, asset-backed securitization, consolidated net worth election, diversified investments, it goes on and on. Fonts, that's a real common one. Family-owned property. Excuse me. We have a ton of F&E webinars. I would like to tell each person in here to just take a minute and scroll through the 61 webinars. Let's see, are they all on one page here? I think they are. Just scroll through here and see what we have done webinars on, because you may find one related to your industry or something that piques your interest for your business that we don't mention, that I don't specifically mention on this in this workshop today. So just take a minute and scroll through there. Just is right in front of me right now. Taxation of computer software. That's a really common one. A lot of people work in computers. Anyways, oh yeah, we've got a new Spanish version of the sales tax basics. That's brand new. Anywho, lots of sales and use tax exemption ones. Yeah. Okay. Now, before we break for more questions about F&E, I'm going to just talk real quick about the other tax accounts that we have. If you sell certain items, there may be a whole other tax account that is required of you. For example, we mentioned it earlier, liquor by the drink. There's a liquor by the drink tax. There is a new hemp-derived cannabinoid tax. So if you sell certain items that that contain any hemp-derived cannabinoids or THC, that type of thing, there's a whole tax account for you there. Tires, if you sell tires, there's a tax account. Coin-operated amusements, coin-operated things, there's a tax account for that. So what I'm going to do is recommend that another thing you spend just 30 seconds on, and you can even do it right now. I'm going to go back to our website. Probably making y'all dizzy with going to our website so much. We got so much good information. So I've showed you this already, the taxes. You can click there or the tile. I'm going to click on the tile. These are all of our taxes. All right. So these three apply to, if you're in business in this state, one of the three of these is probably going to apply to you for sure. The alcohol, beer, and tobacco taxes, a couple of locally, we're not going to pay attention to those right now though, but over here, other taxes. If you rent automobiles, there's one for that. Bail bonds, coin-operated amusements, I mentioned that. Fantasy sports, just on and on here. You can see that there's some other taxes. I don't see. Huh. Am I missing it? I don't see the hemp-derived cannabinoid one. Oh, that's because it's on the sales tax. It's a schedule. That's right. Hemp-derived cannabinoids, that's a schedule on the sales tax return. Anyhow, all right, so there's that. Next thing I want to talk about with you guys is just some general tax kind of information. We mentioned earlier, we do not want to see you get in delinquency. Penalty and interest do apply to any deficient, that means you didn't pay enough, or delinquent payments. The way that's all calculated up, their penalty is 5% of the unpaid amount for each month or partial month, up to a maximum of 25%. Interest is computed at the current rate of interest. I can't remember, we just changed the interest rate. It changes every year on July 1. I can't remember what it just changed to, but collections are made on any taxes not filed and paid. We have a whole webinar. How many times have I said that today? Like 20. Dedicated to tax compliance in the collection process. When someone earlier mentioned that they had gotten an assessment and just paid that. The way it works, and in this webinar, we'll break it down for you. Another webinar that I really highly recommend. You don't ever want to get into that collection process. So in order to avoid it and to make sure you understand the whole process, I'm gonna refer you to watch that webinar. But basically, Tennessee Department of Revenue, if we haven't received a return from you on time about a month later, you're going to start getting letters from us. The first one is just going to say, hey, we didn't hear from you. We're going to just put this assessment out there for this until you file. It's called a notice of proposed assessment, the NOPA that I mentioned earlier. So that's not what you owe unless you owe that unless you do file. But if you don't pay that or file, then you're going to start the collection process. The next letter is going to be called a final demand letter. It sounds kind of scary, but you don't want to get to that point. If you've gotten that final demand letter, that means that return that's missing or returns in your account has made it all the way to our collections division, and they're going to be calling you. You definitely don't want to ignore calls or letters from them. Make sure your information is up to date with us in TENTAP, because you want to know when you get into this process and if there's anything you need to fix, because unfortunately this is one of the worst parts about what we do. If there is a account that has gone so delinquent, by law, we have to levy or lien after a certain number, a certain amount of attempts that our collections division has to make trying to get in touch with you, trying to get you in compliance. That's why, again, make sure your phone number's up to date with us. You've got we got a good address on file, because I used to work in our collections division for a short time, and it was really sad when you got to the point where you tried to get in touch with somebody. Maybe their business closed and they just forgot to file a final return, or maybe the business never even opened, but they had some tax accounts they never filed for them. That was so unfortunate. But eventually, after enough attempts to try to get for us to get things right with you, we have to levy and lien, even if you're an LLC. So you don't want to get to that point. Watch this with this webinar. This is the not fun slide. I don't even like to talk about it, but it's a fact of life that it gets to that point. And the whole purpose of what we do, having these webinars, having these new business workshops, is to get you to understand all of the requirements so that you don't end up delinquent. Nobody wants to pay even $1 more than you need to the government. And it's really unfortunate when you're having to pay penalties and interest just for not understanding something fully. So all the information is out there. Not saying that it's easy, not saying that it's not complicated. We try to take some of the guesswork out of it with our trainings that we do, but that's where those manuals and the information we have on our website is extensive. I mean, there is everything you could ever need to know about each tax type in these manuals and on our web pages. No excuses. And we're always here to help if something does seem too complicated or confuses you. All right, we're going to just go ahead and blaze forward to talk about the resources now. Unless Billy or Dan, do you want to stop and answer any that have come about, or should we just wait and see if we've got time at the end?
Katie, I was just going to say that looks like we've got some decent questions coming in here too. I did post the interest rate in the chat,
Cool.
12.5%, and that's in
Woo.
addition to the penalty rate of 5% per month or a part of a month. So that's high.
Yeah.
Again, we don't want you paying this, but you got to if you don't. So there you go.
Okay.
Put a link in here also, Katie. I mentioned that the F&E Basics webinar that you and I have got planned
Mm-hmm.
with some technical folks at the end of October is a good one for them to sign up, and you can start doing that at the beginning of October. Typically, we'll
Mm-hmm.
start the signups a few weeks ahead of the webinars. Yeah.
Yeah, we only do registration for each webinar 1 month at a time. You can only register for the upcoming one that we have.
We also find that people forget they register, which is no big shakes really, but
Yeah.
kind of wish people would show up. We kind of like to hear from you guys. So yeah.
Yeah. We've got a
All right.
good crowd in here today.
Oh yeah, great crowd.
All right. Okay. Let's move ahead. This is a really, really important part, the resources. Number one resource we're going to tell you about is TENTAP. This is what, like I said, this is our online filing, kind of like online banking. You can register for tax accounts. Online filing is required for all of our tax accounts now. That's been rolling out for about the last 6 years now, unless you have a special exemption to be able to file on paper, which is really rare to be able to get that. You have to file online, and you do so on TENTAP. As Billy mentioned earlier, you can schedule payments in advance if you wanted to go ahead and file today for your June sales tax account. You can set up it to actually come out of your account, your bank account, on the due date. So that's cool. This is one of the best parts: automatic correction of common errors. Man, back in the day when there were paper returns, the back and forth and all of the when there was a mistake. Well, now, just like any, I think for the most part, we're all pretty used to filling things out online, right? Where you can't move forward if there's something that you skipped. Same with TINTAP. If there's a little required thing or if numbers aren't adding up, it will alert you. TINTAP lets you know that there's something missing or there's something not right. Now, it's not always super clear to everyone. Sometimes you have to call us. So we get calls in our general call center around filing time where people are like, I just don't know why it's not letting me move forward. Well, our call center agents are very trained to help you pretty quickly figure out what's going on. You can amend past returns. and access all your returns. You can access certificates, letters. A lot of counties and cities now kind of approve a license, a business license, to come through your TENTAP account. Not all. A couple of the big ones, Shelby, Memphis, and Davidson, Nashville, don't have theirs coming through TENTAP, but most other counties and cities do send their business licenses, access to the business license, your business license, through to TENTAP. So that's kind of cool. You can view all your letters. A lot more too. So this right here, what you see in the middle, all taxpayers should have access to the master TENTAP account. I cannot stress that enough. If you are handing over the reins to all of this and you're going to be paying somebody to do all this for you, that's great. Fine, more power to you. That's great. But you still need to have access to it. It's almost like saying, here's my bank account. Somebody else, I don't even know what's in my bank account. I can't even log into my bank account because somebody else handles all my paying my bills for me and everything. But don't you want to be able to see it though? Yes, of course. Same with TENTAP. You want to have the master level access. And again, you want master access to your TENTAP account so that that's how you can actually manage who the third parties are that can get into your TENTAP account. Uh, Last year, not this past filing season, so it was about a little over a year ago, I was helping a customer. It was on tax due date. It was on the 15th, April 15th, and they needed to go in and file, and their unfortunately their CPA had or bookkeeper, whoever it was that did all their stuff in TENTAP for them, had passed away very recently, and they had no idea how to. They didn't have any access, and it was tax day. So we were able to help them. That was good that they figured it out on that day, except instead of the day after that. But we were able to help them and get them set up and get access to everything. But that wouldn't have happened if they had had access to their accounts to begin with, having master TENTAP account access. So if you are a tax professional that's in this training right now, and you have clients where you know that they don't have TENTAP access, please encourage them to gain master level access. If you're a tax professional that has that master level access for one of your clients, that's not good. You don't want that. We need to help you get that. You can delete that. We actually have a whole webinar dedicated to third-party access for CPAs and bookkeepers and such, that tells you how to kind of remedy that. You need to delete that access and then go back in and add yourself having third-party access. TENTAP was new in 2018. A lot of accounts and CPAs got set up as the master level access for some of their customers, and fix that, please, if you're one of those. We want the business, the taxpayer, what we refer to as the taxpayer, to have that access. I think I harped on that enough. All right, so I have not told y'all about our revenue help section yet. I'm going to take you over there in just a second, but specifically regarding TENTAP, there's a whole section in in revenue help dedicated to TENTAP. There are general how-to videos. You can see here just an example, how to create a TENTAP logon, filing the sales tax return, filing just some basic stuff here, how to log into TENTAP, how to gain access to your accounts, gaining access as a third party. Then general stuff about TENTAP login, about registration, lots about payments. You can plug in bank account information, that kind of thing, how to file the returns. There are hundreds of help articles just about all of this. And I'm going to take you over there right now and show you revenue help. Okay, back at the top here, tn.gov/revenue, our homepage. Revenue help right here. Click there. And this is going to be separated into sections. TENTAP, all the taxes, the collections process. Not sure what that is. Okay. This is vehicle title and registration related. Tennessee Department of Revenue. In this state, we also handle vehicle titling and registration. So you're going to see some articles about that. Same with here, motor carrier, vehicle, TNR. Out-of-state dealers, marketplace facilitators, and sellers. There's a whole section there. We're also having a webinar dedicated to that topic. I believe it's in November. But we're going to click on the TENTAP section here for a second. This is the little snip that I just showed you on that slide, but showed you what the how-to videos. But you can see here there are 22 articles just about TENTAP. 20 articles about how to create a login. So I'm not going to go into all that today and right now. If you don't have TENTAP access, we do have a webinar for that. I need a little recording or a little push button that says we have a webinar for that. We do have a webinar dedicated to TENTAP. So you can search our webinar video library for that. But here's just another great section to just getting started in TENTAP, how to get started, creating that username and password, information that you're going to need. There's like a little checklist there. Stuff about TENTAP. Great information about TENTAP login. If you're already logged into TENTAP, there might still be some information in here that is useful to you. If you ever get confused or get stuck and don't feel like calling us, which you always can, you can always email or call us, but you may want to check here first. If you're having problems with getting that authentication code where it sends you a code that you have to put in, all that, there's information about that. TENTAP registration, got a total of 11 articles there. How to register a new location through TENTAP, closing a location in TENTAP. One of the biggest, I know I mentioned this, but one of the biggest issues with people going into collections is not businesses that are purposefully being neglectful, but businesses who have closed or never started. And we have in our system, we still show you with a tax account owing us returns. As far as we know, we don't know what we don't know, right? So how to close locations in TENTAP, very important there. Different error messages, just lots of information there about TENTAP registration, lots of information about payments, 18 whole articles there. Check that out. If nothing else, at least just kind of peruse through here and see what to read every article, but see what's available to you. 13 articles about TENTAP tax returns. So great information there. While I'm here, even though we're talking about TENTAP mainly, I'm going to go ahead and show you another resource. I've already shown you the taxes page from the website. You click on taxes, remember that. I've already shown you where all of our taxes pretty much have a manual associated with them. Great resource. Already shown you the webinar video library where you can see webinars dedicated to lots of different topics. But here's another great resource is revenue help and all the different articles. Let's see, business tax, 74 articles that we've got specifically about business tax. Just as an example, you can always type something into the search. There is a little gnat by me. Sorry, I look crazy grabbing at something. It's driving me crazy. The search bar here, you can type in any word and it'll search our revenue help articles database. If you can't find your answer and want to reach out to us, there's also a little quick way to do that. You can always email us at revenue.support@tn.gov. You can also come down here to submit a request and click there and just choose what your topic is from the drop down. It'll prompt you to put your email address in there, and then that automatically creates a help ticket for us in the same way that emailing us does. They all funnel to the same help team here at Taxpayer Services or Department of Revenue that will quickly help you. We have some internal goals of except for if it's a crazy time of year like the week taxes are due or anything like that, we have some really short windows where we try to get back to you within a few hours if you submit a help ticket or an email to us. Can't promise that we'll always reach that, but that's our goal. Same with when you call us. We unless it's a tax deadline day, you're going to get a human being on the phone pretty quickly, very quickly, and it's easy. Not a million prompts that you've got to go through and stuff. So I'm going to take you while I'm over here so that we're not flip-flopping so much. And we'll get back to TENTAP in a minute, but I'm just going to make sure that I've covered all the bases. Piecemeal, I have shown you a lot of information on our website. Again, tn.gov/revenue is our home. I've shown you, I've told you about the e-filing information. How this is where if you've got vendor software, that's where you go. Oh, this is interesting. This how do I? It's kind of like quick links to get to certain things. I would recommend you checking that out just to see what's there. This is basically kind of quick links to a lot of our common stuff. Interesting there. I mentioned earlier about closing a business. You don't want to think about that right now, I know, because you're a new business, but this is a great page right here that gives lots of resources about all the different types of tax accounts that we have and how to close them out properly, because you don't want to end up in collections for failing to close out your business properly. Just file that away, tuck that away for one of these days when you're ready to move on to something else and close your business down. So I've shown you the taxes, how each tax page is detailed information about that specific tax type in the menu on the left. One thing I wanted to show you, I was thinking about this during our break, on the sales and use tax page on the menu on the left here, forms is where you will see a bazillion, and like look here, there's so many. These are the different forms you fill out if you want to apply for an exemption, okay, and other forms as well. There's just a whole lot going on there, but lots of good information there. Back to our home page. So I've shown you tax resources. The main thing on our tax resources page is the tax guidance. I know I'm clicking around kind of fast, but tax resources, then tax guidance, that's where you're going to see the manuals. This is where you can have a link directly over to the TCA and the rules. Important notices by tax type here. Information just about various things there, the legislative summaries, which is our upcoming webinar that we've got. Also on the tax, I'm on the tax resources page here. This is information about tax compliance. There's a good little video on there that it's about just a few minutes that talks about the collections process. Again, you don't want to end up in the collections circle, but it might be good just to check that out to make sure, you know, you may have gotten, you may be in collections and you don't even know it yet. That's something you don't, that's where you don't want to be. I'm gonna go back to the top to our home page. I showed you TENTAP. I'm going to go back over there in just a minute, but the other main thing I just want to show you, in addition to, you know, I showed you the new business page at the very beginning, ages and ages ago, 2 hours ago. That's a great resource. This is where you can find all of our webinars and everything. I want to go to the very bottom. You can see here our news and events. This is kind of current stuff. On the very bottom is information about how to contact us, different ways to contact us. We do still have some, we're mainly all remote now, but we do have some offices, some regionally located offices that are open certain hours and certain days if you just need to go into a revenue office. We are going to ask you to kind of go through a process to make an appointment to visit one of those taxpayer services offices. That's right here. This is how you can call us, several different ways to reach out to us if you have a question, if you are in collections and need to reach out to them. Question about refunds, penalty waivers, just lots of different contact information there. So going back to the home page, now I'm going to go over to TENTAP. This is where once you have created your username and password, this is where you'll go to log into it right here. This is how you create one if you haven't done that yet. Once you create a TENTAP password, this is one of the main areas of confusion. Once you're in there, you're not going to see anything. You actually have to then add in access to your tax accounts. It sounds kind of silly that we don't automatically do that, but it's for various reasons. Once you've created your TENTAP username password, you get logged in, people are like, I don't see anything here. They call us. Well, there's a process of how to gain access to your tax accounts once you're logged in there. That's where you're going to need a little bit of information, and that information can be found on the letters that you receive from us. So if you're a new business, save those letters that you're getting from us once you register for tax accounts, because registering for the accounts does not give you access to them in TENTAP. It's just another step you have to take. So some other things that you can do without logging into TENTAP, you can make payments for your accounts. You can do that once you're logged in too, but if you just want to make a quick payment and you have your account information that you want to make a payment for, you can do so there. This is where you can file returns. That minimum F&E is right here. You can file hall income, professional privilege, consumer use. Back to TENTAP home here. This is where you're going to register. Again, if you've already been to your clerk's office, that registered you for and got a standard business license, that registers you for business tax. But if you need a sales tax account, this is where you start. You can also do it if you already have a TENTAP account. You can register for another tax account from TENTAP. I'll show you that. But if you haven't yet, this is where you can apply for exemptions for F&E, obtain tax clearance, register a new business, register a couple other things here. So I don't want to get too far in those weeds. Approved alcohol and beer brands, if that applies to you, something to check out there. This view inquiries, this is where I showed you where you can look up to see if a exemption certificate is valid. Remember that here? It's down under other. The other thing I want to point out on this page that is interesting that might help you is this look up tax account numbers. If you're stuck and you need your tax account number, if you know you've set up an account with us for F&E, let's say, and you just can't find your F&E account number, you can look that up here. You're going to need to provide your EIN number and some other basic information, but that's a way that you can get your account numbers. And then help and additional services here. This basically just takes you over, a lot of these links take you directly over to our revenue help. Okay, back over to the slides here. Now we are going to kind of dive in as if we're in TENTAP. If you've already created a TENTAP account, some of this is going to look familiar to you. If you haven't, after you create your TENTAP account, you may want to come back to this and look at this again just to give you a little bit more information. But a cool feature, and you might have noticed it over on the TENTAP home where we just were. This was where you log in. This is where you create a login. This is kind of a zoomed in area of that. There was a little like chat bubble icon thing. That is what we call our TENTAP assistant. Once you're in TENTAP, once you're on this page without logging in, and once you have logged in, you both places you're going to see this little option here. You click on that. It's actually a bot, but it's a way that can automatically search our database of information for any question you might have about TENTAP. And then the cool part is sometimes those bots can be a little bit annoying. There are times that I just X out of it when I get a box. I think, no, I want a person. Well, don't X out of it. If you can't find your answer, this send a message. We don't have a live chat function, but this send a message thing sends a direct message over to our help support team. If you couldn't find your answer, that sends it right over, or a link over to how to contact us by phone. If you're like me, I don't like to ever call. I don't like to. I do enough talking in my regular life. I don't want to call. I don't want to talk. I want to find my answer in other ways: email, chat, whatever. So TENTAP Assistant, very cool feature. All right, so what you're seeing here is a screenshot of assuming you have already logged into TENTAP, and this particular person has already added access to a couple of accounts. Now you're going to see up here, this is TENTAP Home. You're going to see welcome, your name, Katie Julian. Okay, a couple things I want to put your attention on here is manage my profile, and then this little section right here, which is how you're gonna scroll through. They're kind of like tabs, even though they don't look like tabs. This is like tabbing to different areas, but this is TENTAP Home. All right, this person, Jim Jones Corp, has already added access to a business tax account and to a franchise and excise tax account in this example that we're looking at right here. When you first log into TENTAP, you're not going to see anything down here. Remember I was telling you you've got to add access? I'll show you here in a second where you do that, but this person's already done that. You can see here, I've shown you little snips on some other screens, but this is where you see for his business tax account, excuse me, the balance is zero. If there was a tax liability, if there was an amount that was owed for that account, you would see that number, it would be in red and there would be a negative in front of it. So you want, just think you want to see green for these balances right here, okay? For your tax accounts, depending on the tax account, there's going to be a variety of things you'll see here. Make a payment, view or file returns. That's something for every tax account. That's an option. But additional actions and licenses. This is where you would click to, if it's a business tax account, you would click on licenses there to click on additional actions and licenses. If you've already gotten your business tax, your business license locally, this is where if your city or county authorizes to send licenses through to TENTAP, where you would see that. Franchise, excise. If you click on additional actions there, there's some different things. So if you've already added access to your tax accounts, I always tell people, go in there and just click around and play around. There's definitely no harm you can do by just clicking and seeing what's where. Anything that requires an important change that you would make, you'll know that that you're making a change and you're doing something, an actionable item, because it makes you put in your password again. It's kind of like signing off. Like, okay, if you're wanting to change your address in TENTAP or something like that, you're going to have to put in your password again. That kind of serves as your signature, authorizing us to do whatever it is you're wanting us to do. That goes from submitting a return to changing your address to adding or changing banking information, registering an account. All that's going to require you to do a whole nother step. Just poking around through here and clicking around, reading the letters that you see, seeing what's where, seeing what's in this action center, seeing what's in set. All of that is just, you need to do that. If you've got TENTAP and you have access to your accounts, poke around. All right. So we're going to kind of go through what these tabs are. The Action Center. That Action Center tab, we were on the Summary tab before. This is what you're going to see. See how that's highlighted in blue? This is what you're going to see in the Summary when you're on Summary. It kind of defaults to that. Excuse me. Y'all are probably sick of hearing my voice. My voice is sick of talking. Anyways, okay. So Action Center. These are going to be, you definitely want to check out the Action Center. This is messages that you have not read and any financial balances that are due or any returns that are overdue, or not necessarily just overdue, that are just due. All right. any uh, returns due or overdue are going to show up here in the Action Center as well. The next tab that we're going to look at is More. We kind of skipped over settings. A lot of what you're going to see in settings is just kind of mechanical stuff with TENTAP, but there is so much, and I'm going to ask you if you can here, if you want to zoom in, click the little zoom, the plus button on this on this slide. I'm just going to show you what all you're going to see here under the More tab. First of all, you can just search for whatever you're looking for in a little search. People sometimes overlook that's not, when you're in TENTAP, it's not highlighted in red. There's just a little magnifying glass. But if you're wondering where something is within TENTAP, you can search for it there. But let's look at this here, Manage Accounts. This is where you can register a new account. When we were talking about business tax earlier, remember I said there's two ways to do it, either going directly to your clerk, and then that creates your business tax account, or you start with us. You can do it without logging in over there on the registration link on TENTAP before you log in, or if you've already got TENTAP and you're wanting to register a new account, you can do it here. Let's say an example is you have your business tax account, you went and got your standard business license, that's what requires the business tax account. You've gained access on TENTAP, let's say, but you need a sales tax account now. That is where you could go register new account to open up your sales tax account. That's an example there. Register a new location. Let's say you've got a business already, you're up and running, and you're ready to open up another one. You're opening up a satellite office or another office somewhere, a whole new business maybe. I don't know. This is where you'll register a new location. All right, so let's say you've logged into TENTAP, you've gotten that, but you do not yet have access to your tax accounts. This gain access to an account is where you go. So you're at TENTAP Home, you see nothing. You don't see any tax accounts listed there. You're going to click on More, and then under Manage Accounts, you're going to click on Gain Access to an Account. And that is where it will ask you some information. You're going to need that account number, which you can find over there. I showed you under information and inquiries. You can look up an account number. You can call us also. We'll have to verify that you are who you say you are and that you're not some random wanting your business's tax account number, we can give that to you. We can help you. But if you have, this is why I say save your letters, because any letter you get from us is going to have a tax account number on it, and it's going to have what's called a letter ID. If you have that letter ID, it makes gaining access to your accounts so easy. It's like just takes 1 second, one minute to do. So save your letters from us. This is where also you can request a payment plan or cancel a payment plan. Payment plans, usually those are initiated when someone makes their way to collections or cannot afford their tax liability. It's not a very common thing. You don't want to get to that point where you have a payment plan because the interest rate on it is gigantic. It's huge. I don't even know what it is right now. It just got upped again though on July 1. So, but if you're wanting to add in your banking information, that's not done there under payments. That actually is something that you will do under manage my profile. So this payments section under the more tab is just for payment plans. Under additional services, this is where you can print certificates. That's going to take you over to any kind of certificates that you would need to or you would like to print off. You can initiate the refund process, lots of other things you can see here, obtain tax clearance, just kind of jumping around a little. On this more tab, you can also view your names and addresses and change them. You want to keep up, you want us to be up to date, like I said, with anything that we're sending you. You want to make sure that you get it. You can always access your letters and stuff here, but we recommend that everybody keep their actual addresses up to date. Changing location addresses is a little more complicated because sometimes that requires you to actually get another license. If you've moved, sometimes even just across the street, in some areas across the street can be a whole nother jurisdiction, right? Whole other county, whole other city. So it gets a little more complex when it comes to changing locations. Our TENTAP webinar goes into detail about that. If you're ever changing the address of a location, it gets, like I said, just little trickier there. This is where I was telling you, if you've got master level access, you can see who has access to your TENTAP. You can manage who has access to it. If you're a third party, same thing. You can see here who all you have access to. A lot of third parties, a lot of CPAs may give access to one of their, maybe to their assistant or a coworker to be able to file on behalf of one of their customers. Well, if you're the master TENTAP account holder, you're the business, so to speak, that's where you can see who all has access. It's cut off. I need to make myself a note. I keep meaning to not have this cut off and put a new snip in here, but submissions. This is where you can look and see everything you have done in TENTAP. Some people, sometimes you think you've submitted a return, but you've really just not gotten all the way to the end. Something happened and you got it all filled out, but you never quite submitted it. You would see that in here in submissions. You would see if you submitted one too. So checking out what you've done in TENTAP is sometimes helpful, but that's where that tile down here shows you that. All right, so we're getting towards the end here. I am going to have a little bit of time for questions, so that's good. But this is a great slide that shows you all the different ways to stay in touch with us and contact us. Several different social media platforms that we're on, obviously our website. You can sign up for updates from us. If you want to receive emails from us, we don't spam you, we don't share it, but we will send you if there's an important notice, if there is an upcoming webinar that we've got. We will send you an email about that if you sign up to receive those updates. If you're a business or a CPA, I'm going to recommend that you do that. Sign up for email updates. All of our different webinars and stuff are on YouTube. You can also obviously get to those through our webinar video archive. I think I've seen Billy and Dan share this a bunch of times, but here it is again. Here is how you email us, revenue.support@tn.gov, or you can call. This is our general tax helpline. We do have a specific line for F&E help. You can get to that by calling our general line too, but 615-253-0600. Support staff is going to be available to answer these help tickets and emails and phone calls. We're based out of Central Time. We're based out of Nashville, so that's 8 to 4:30 Central Time. You may be able to reach us. We do have people that work in all time zones here, maybe a little earlier, a little later, but just I would say be safe, 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. Of course, we are closed on federal holidays. You will not get through to us quickly on a tax deadline day, especially not April 15th. Just FYI. This link here is to I showed you earlier how to get to our contact numbers and office locations in the footer of our main page, but this will take you directly there as well. All right. One more thing, and then Billy, Dan, we're be gearing up for some questions that have come through, because I'm about to get to that point. Just to let you know, the upcoming webinars we have. Webinars are typically, there's been a couple of times it's not been this way, but almost always the last Tuesday of the month, and we do one every month. This month, it's the legislative updates. It's all of the information regarding laws that passed in this recent General Assembly session regarding taxes. In August, we're doing Retail Accountability Program, the RAP program. In September, alcohol taxes. Like we said, October is F&E basics. November, marketplace sellers and facilitators. And then consumer use tax in December. Here's a link to our webinar video library. I've shown you now how to get there. You should know. But now we're ready for questions. All right, we got about 10 minutes or so. Has anything come through that's that we want to discuss, Billy, Dan?
Well, excuse me, lots of questions have come through, but I'll just narrow down a couple here that I've seen here most recently. Justine asked if they already had business licenses from the counties. Do you have to create a business tax account and access it through TENTAP? The answer to that is having a business license from a county or a city is going to trigger some sort of a record with us. Okay. And it's going to note the license that you have, either a minimal activity license or a standard license. Okay. So if you have a standard license, meaning that you expect to have more than 100,000 in gross sales, then that's going to be an account that's going to require the payment of tax. And that's the one that you want access to on TENTAP. Now, not to say that we couldn't give you access to the account even if it were minimal activity. It's just not as important because there's no tax that goes along with that. So that's the reason. So that's basically it, and that's how that works, Justine. Labor and workforce, do they have seminars like this? Don't know.
I don't know either.
Don't know.
I
the
know
answer
that they
to
use the set, like I know that you can submit tickets to them the same way that you do to us. But yeah, I'm not sure about that. Would be helpful if they did.
Someone asked also how they can remove an account from TENTAP if they're working with a client or they no longer work with a client. And I think that can be an administrative function within TENTAP.
It is. That webinar I was telling y'all about, the third-party access webinar, has specific instructions on how you delete your access to an old client's account. It'll show you or you can also, I know I can show you where it is. It's under this access part. That's where you go. I think you under manage access, and kind of self-explanatory once you get there. But if you have questions about that,
and there's lots of other fancy things you can do in assigning clients to specific groups or other people in your office. If you happen to have a lot of accountants that work in your office and you want them to only have access to a select number of accounts to do a very specific function, it's that precise. And then if worse comes to worse, pick up the phone and call us, send us an email, say, hey, my username is this. I've been trying to go into here and I can't get it done. Can you help me out and tell me what I need to do or fix it for me? Sure. And we will do that.
Ashley has a question here. If your is your classification able to change on your license after watching this webinar? I think my clerk may have assigned me the wrong classification. Yes, you contact us and your county clerk, and we can fix that for you. Some businesses, if they are in the business of selling lots of different things have to change it each year based on what their dominant sales are even. So that's something that we can
Mhm.
help you with, but it's not
Let me
a self-service thing. You have to contact us.
let me give you an asterisk with your answer there, Katie. If someone has a minimal activity license and they're not going to be remitting tax to us, yes, it's a good idea that we still update their classification because we want to have the right information. But there's no real consequence to it because they're not going to end up sending us any tax. So
Right.
therefore having a license that has classification 2 on it when it should have had 3 on it, when you're not paying tax, it doesn't make any difference.
Hmm.
And you can keep that license. There's not any sort of ramifications from it. But at the same time, we do want it updated here. So if you'll let us know that, we'll change it so that we have the record officially at the state level as correct. And of course, that's shared back to the clerk as well. Should you get another license, it'll have the correct classification on it at that point. And of course, if you are paying tax on a standard business license, you've got to have the right classification or your rate will be messed up.
Hmm.
Okay. So you don't want to do that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And Katie, I kind of think that's hitting basically everything that we can get to at least today. And of course, knowing that we're going to be able to answer people's questions that email us and send us phone calls, we're glad to help them out that way.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you all for being here with us today. I know it was a lot of information. Hopefully, it helped you somewhat. That is our goal. And if you have any other questions, you see here on your screen how to reach out to us. We'll hope to see you on future webinars and hope you have a great rest of your day. And
And
again, if you
don't forget to do your survey.
survey, that's what I was about to say. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Have a good day, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.